You're listening to Coding Blocks, episode 40. Subscribe to us and leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, and more using your favorite podcast app.
Visit us at codingblocks.net where you can find show notes, examples, discussion, and more.
Send your feedback, questions, and rants to comments@codingblocks.net. Follow us on Twitter @codingblocks or head to www.codingblocks.net and find all our social links there at the top of the page. With that, I'm Alan Underwood.
I'm Joe Zach.
And I'm Michael Outlaw.
This episode is sponsored by Infragistics, visualizing the Internet of Things and making sense of big data. The Internet of Things, mobility, and connected systems are driving the need for big data solutions. It is imperative to help your users and customers make better decisions faster than ever before. Experts in data visualization, Infragistics developer tools drive custom app development for any data visualization scenario on any platform. And Report Plus is an enterprise-ready, self-service BI dashboard solution that opens up your enterprise for big data for end-user consumption. Head over to www.infragistics.com today and get your free trial.
Okay, so let's get into the podcast news here. So first up, I got to say, we thought that last time the reviews were awesome, and they doubled down this time. It was just as awesome. So, do you want me to try to read these again? Do you think it's comical enough if I do it?
I think people don't.
Yeah, I haven't even talked yet this episode. It's my turn.
Oh, look at this. Joe
That's right,
stepping in.
Stepping up. Really, I just wanted to say Bebop 6585 because it's awesome. Also, Phil Britton, Barry Carey, Gnu Henson, Telsney, Eskimo Dragon 13, Jordan G. Lee, Archimedes, J. Psycho, Vodkadam, Redwin, Lowell Moore, J. Rydell, Greg Pakes. Sorry, I had to take a breath there because there's so many names. Thank you so much. And now it's just for iTunes. We also had a few on Stitcher. FPW23, CD Aguia, Cyberpod, Manreek, and Foop Pfeiffer. These are awesome names.
I think it's Foop Pfeiffer. You did a much better job of pronouncing. That's why I thought it'd be comical if I had to pronounce some of these again. Although I gotta say, when it comes to any type of DOM manipulation, Vodka Dom is definitely my favorite kind of DOM. That if I have to manipulate a DOM, that's the one I want to go with.
True that, man.
I also like Gnu Henson. That's good. And I should get a high five for figuring out Archimedes on the fly there.
Oh yeah,
man. There were excellent written reviews in those too. So Thank you guys for taking the time and doing that. We really do appreciate it. We say it every single time, and we'll continue to say it.
And we mean it every time.
We really do. So thank you very much for doing that. And for all of you who haven't done it yet, come join us over on Slack, man. The conversations are just getting better and better.
Oh, man, there's been some great ones. The Dev Talk channel.
Yes.
Definitely one of my favorite channels.
Yeah, that one's excellent. We got a nice gear channel where everybody talks about things that they're either programming for or thinking about getting to program for. There's some good stuff. And if you want some comic relief, you can just read James constantly on the flow. So yeah, I mean,
James is awesome.
Yeah, there's seriously a ton of value happening over there, and please do send us an invite on, or no, but you can send us an invite, but I don't know what to. If you'll send us your email address, we'll send you an invite into the Slack channel. So
you can send us an email at comments@codingblocks.net, or if you prefer to send us a DM via Twitter, you can send it that way, just as long as you send us your email address, and then we can send you the invite via Slack. And then you can join the fun.
Yep, it's really been excellent. So,
and don't forget the jobs channel.
Oh man,
been posting some job leads, and I know there's a lot of people from all over the world in here, but I kind of like the idea that of promoting at least remote jobs in there, if nothing else, and it's kind of cool.
Yep, and anybody's free to post in there. I've posted several that I get hit up on LinkedIn or whatever. So, if you have something or of a position that needs to be filled, please do feel free to go in there. We don't want it to turn into some sort of spammy type thing, but real things. Go ahead and throw in there. But next up, we got an email from Magnus, and this was an interesting email that we just received the other day. And I thought it was worth talking about briefly here in the news section. Basically, he does a lot of C++ and game development type stuff. And he said when he went looking for a job, basically every job out there is requiring some sort of web programming like JavaScript or something like that. And he's like, do I really need to learn this stuff? I mean, he said he's not into it, but and then he also did a follow-up email after I replied, and he said, the problem is he lives in a country where, like, basically to get a job programming, you have to have a master's degree. Like, a bachelor's isn't even enough. And he asked, is it the same over there in the States? So there's several questions rolled up there, and I think that'd be a great talking point. And, seeing as how we do seem to have people all over the world listening, I mean, let's see what we can do here.
I wanted to point out that the Stack Overflow survey just came out, and it had actually a pretty big section on types of jobs. And like you mentioned, Alan, web developer was at the tippy top by far. So it's not a bad area to have some skills in, even if you don't love it. There's a lot of stuff that goes into making a website besides just the HTML and CSS. There's a lot of scalability issues and just the whole pipeline and everything. And there's a lot of cool, interesting challenges there, even if you don't necessarily like the medium itself.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that the sad fact is if you're looking for a programming job, then by far and away the majority of the jobs you're going to find are going to be for websites, web development. Next after that, you're going to probably find the next. I would guess that the next biggest or percentage of jobs that you're going to find that aren't web programming are going to be either Android or iOS. So if you like one of those two things, that's a hot market. So it's definitely not a bad place to be. If you want to do specifically game development, that's a small market, right?
And you're really tied into, a few dev shops that make enough money to be able to support that kind of thing, right?
And I'm also assuming that by game development, when we're talking about like desktop, game development,
he didn't go
not
into
iOS or
right.
Android type game development, but
right.
And then the list starts to get smaller. If you're talking about like operating systems, so like if you wanted to work at Microsoft, working on Windows, like it's just smaller and smaller pieces of the overall pie that you start cutting at. So yeah, unfortunately, I would say you need to pick up some of that.
I mean, I don't know. Like when I wrote them back, my take was, if web development isn't your thing, then. And just to be clear, like when we say websites, people have this idea that it's just HTML, CSS, whatever. Okay, if it's just a website, maybe. But typically when you get a programming job, it's web applications, right? It's usually something that has some sort of back end that you're supporting, some database, all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of moving pieces to it. But I will say, like, if your heart is truly in game development, then I don't know that I would tell somebody to go learn JavaScript or anything just to be able to get a job, right? It's such a tough sell.
Yeah, but here's the reason why that I'm thinking this though is that, like, let's say in a hypothetical best of world situation, you get that dream job, right? And let's say it was Neversoft as just an example company, right?
Right.
So you get a job at Neversoft, doing game development for them, and then I don't know, let's just say that something bad happened in Neversoft and they go through a round of layoffs, and unfortunately your name got in that pile, right? Mm-hmm. You got to go start looking for the next job, right?
Where are you
You're going to start putting your name out there as having no web development at all, no experience, no skills in it, right? That's why I'm saying, like, you need to pay attention to it. It's kind of a big thing,
right? It's so hard. I mean, it's almost. I guess for me, because I actually enjoy a lot of the aspects of web application work, it's not a big deal. But there are definitely things that people will throw out that they're like, hey, why don't you learn X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, I don't want to, right? And I guess because I work in an area where there is a ton of demand, it works out for me. So I don't know how I would be if I was truly in love with game development, doing C++ and saying, I don't really want to do JavaScript, right? I mean, Joe, what about you? What are your thoughts?
I'm still stuck looking at Neversoft video games. Tony Hawk, Pro Skater 2. I got a little derailed, but no, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. If I in particular don't love HTML and CSS, and a lot of things that go wrong with being a web developer, but I've also been a web developer for a long time, and there's a lot of different areas to work in. And so it kind of depends on what type of things you don't like about working on the web, and maybe seeing if there are some newer technologies or maybe different ways of working that kind of augment the things that you do like.
That's interesting, right? Yeah, you could work on the business end of web applications, and then that way you're doing things that are more closely related, or even like big data type stuff, right? Like there's a lot of problems to be solved there.
Or are we talking about like server side
Yeah, like server side type stuff, right? Because if you're doing,
batch processing, kind of like those type of jobs?
yeah, I mean, I don't know what would actually like satisfy his appetite, right? Like there's a certain type of programming that each person kind of.
Well, I mean, I think he specifically said game development.
It is, but what part
WebGL?
of it? What? Yeah, is it just
Yeah, he
the
says
graphical
C++,
piece?
OpenGL, assembly, Java, and libraries to make games. So, I mean, he's clearly into the game development world.
Yeah, I mean, and you can do that on the web too, right? Like there are
and
actually game engines
let me
on the
correct
web.
that because he says he says C, C++.
Oh, not C++.
So-
C and
well,
C++.
it was both.
Right.
Because then the next question that I was about to ask myself, but then I rechecked his notes, was that most games are in C, right? But
I don't know. Like if I was going to do a game, I'd just do Unity, but that's because I'm lazy. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. And then on the education question, right? So I think here in the States, it might be slightly different. I mean, going back to that survey that Joe brought up a minute ago, like I think more than half the people were self-educated. They were self-taught developers.
oh, it was way more than half.
It
wasn't
was
it? Was
high.
like 80.
It was
Something?
high.
Yeah, but it's 70, but there's overlap. So you could have identified as self-taught and had a bachelor's.
Okay, fair enough.
But so I think the better number to look at there is who has a Bachelor of Science in computer science. It was 34%, and there's BA in computer science or a related field was another 8%. So basically,
40.
depending on how, so you're looking around 40, depending on how people kind of did it, and that's just for the bachelor's, and so master's was 20%. So
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of interesting. I mean, a lot of the people, for instance, like Joe, you didn't end up finishing your bachelor's, right?
right,
And,
correct.
And I finished mine, but well after I'd been programming for years. Like it was basically for me, it was nothing more than to check that box so that if my name ever did end up in a resume pile somewhere, mine wasn't just going to get discarded because I didn't have that piece of paper. So literally, I had already been programming for a long time before I did this. So it may be region specific. Like here in the States, I definitely feel like if you're one of those people that shows a high aptitude for it, you don't necessarily need a degree. Now, it might make it a little bit tougher for you to even get your foot in the door because they're going to be looking at a bunch, they got 100 people over here with degrees and then this stack over here with people that don't. And for employment, a lot of places will have that requirement that, you have a bachelor's or equivalent. And so sometimes you kind of get discarded before it ever happens.
I really feel like those degrees are like in your first few years
Yeah.
of whatever your career is.
Totally.
Right. Once you get past year 5, then I don't know that it matters as much.
Yeah, it's usually at that point references, accomplishments, networking.
Well, it's what you're currently doing. Like,
Yeah.
The things that you learned 5 years ago you might have covered technologies that we don't really care about today so much. I mean, hopefully you got good, strong foundational patterns and things like that. But yeah.
Also curious too, boot camps show up as like 6.5%. I wonder whether it's going to be like, say, 5 years from now. There definitely seem to be a lot of those springing up, and I hear good things about the graduates. So,
Well, it makes sense too, right? Because a lot of those boot camps, they are not cheap, and a lot of them guarantee placement for people afterwards, right? Like if you were one of those people that did something, they'll be like, hey, we're going to hook you up with a job. Now, I don't know what kind of level it's at. Like I doubt you're going to be jumping into a super duper high paying job if this is your first go around, but that's a good point too.
Well, for all the self-taught developers out there, I got a tip for you then during the tips section of the show.
So
yeah, it's just think it's interesting to think that a company might think that someone who's spent, say, 6 weeks, working exclusively on Ruby on Rails is, more or as valuable as a college graduate, to, at least to them for what they need. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how that continues to evolve.
yeah, I mean, we've all been involved with interviewing people, and I will say, like a lot of times people coming out of college, like you have them sit down and try and do, a problem on the board, hey, show me, how you would model this particular problem, right? And they'll struggle through it. But then somebody that sat through a boot camp for, we'll call it 6 weeks, where they are literally just hardcore programming and trying to create something, it's a little bit different than taking a test here and there. So there's definitely some value, and they pick up some valuable skills as well. So
Yeah. So with that, like we said, I think Joe tweeted out the Stack Overflow developer survey was out. Got a little bit early on that one, didn't you, Joe?
I sure did.
they yanked it back.
Yeah, they retracted it and then put it back up.
So that just means you get to tweet it twice.
Right.
I'm going to tweet it again right now.
Yeah.
3 times. Thrice.
Nice. Nice.
Oh, and then one other thing that came up on our Slack channel that I thought was interesting, and a lot of people will say things like this, and this is just my take, and this is the reason I wanted to bring it up. If somebody says, if we had had unit tests, we would have caught that problem. That problem has to be a problem with the code, right? A unit test is made to test that the code that was written does what you think that code should do. However, writing a unit test to cover a business case that wasn't implemented the right way is not valuable. So,
But you can have unit tests for your business rules too.
you can, but that's what I'm saying. Like when you hear somebody say, so basically somebody implements something wrong, a unit test is not going to catch that.
Well, no. In that case, the unit test is just going to prove that it's
Working the way you designed it.
incorrectly.
Right. And that's my whole point. Like you can't just say things in a vacuum, right? Like when you
But that sounds like a problem of like you're describing not having valuable unit tests then.
No, you don't have a business processes reviewed properly, right? And we've talked about this before with having tools that allow users to be able to verify a unit test.
SpecFlow we've talked about.
Right.
I think Cucumber was the JavaScript version of it.
But that's kind of my point, is just saying if you are a development manager or something, if we had unit tests, it would have caught that. No. If you implement the business rule that was made and you have unit tests to cover your code and all those things are in line, then yeah, you'll catch these problems before they go out, right?
Possibly.
Yes, possibly. That's best case scenario. But it's just, I don't know. That was one thing I wanted to bring up, because I hear a lot of times people will just throw out buzzwords like, if you do this, then you wouldn't have this problem. And I'm like, no, that's not necessarily true. The developers have to understand the business problem first so that they can actually design it properly. And that's where we talked about this before with test-driven development.
Well, I was about to bring that up.
If you start first so that you truly understand the business problem before you even start writing the code, right? Like you write your unit test cases first so that as you implement your code, it adheres to that. That makes a lot of sense. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, don't just make statements, kind of broad sweeping statements that are true only if you meet these certain criteria,
Well, you got to own it, right? Like, I make so many mistakes all the time, and I'm sure I don't all of them, because I would never get any work done. But I mean, when you do make a mistake, and trust me, if you're programming, especially, you're going to make so many millions of mistakes a day that you just got to get used to just kind of taking it and owning it and fixing it.
Yep.
Yeah,
and not blaming it on unit tests.
That's the bigger thing, though. Right.
Yeah.
And we've talked about owning
Yes.
things before. I think most recently during the conversation about the 12-factor app.
Yeah, it was in there. So
So,
anyway, all right. What's our next?
all right. Well, we're going to be continuing on. This is the final part of our How to Be a Programmer series. This is How to Be an Advanced Programmer. As we continue on with Robert L. Reed's book, and we will have links to the latest version of his book that you can check that out, or essay. I guess this is what he called it.
Yeah.
Yep. Although, wanted to point out too, so this book divided into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Tonight we're doing advanced. In Slack, we had quite a bit of conversation around at one point, does a developer go from like junior to senior? And so if I were to kind of try and take that type of terminology and apply it to this book, would you guys say like junior is beginner, senior is intermediate, and then maybe like
Fellow.
senior, maybe architect, maybe project, or maybe programming lead would be the advanced?
That's maybe kind of. I mean, a lot of these topics we're going to touch on tonight seem to be a lot about developing people under you and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So maybe, but the only problem I have with that is an architect is usually still highly involved in design and may not necessarily be the person development person. You know, the guy that's trying to build up people under him. You know, a lot of times I see that more in a managerial type role. So it's hard to say, but I do think that one of the topics that came up with that was, is it time? Is it experience? To me, like I'd have no problem calling a 25-year-old a senior level developer if they had truly experienced a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like they knew how the tiers of applications are supposed to work, the design, the architecture, how things fit together, how to make things faster, all that. Like I think senior is a level of comprehension and understanding of problems that you deal with in software development, right? So it's not necessarily, hey, you're 35 years old or 40 years old or 50 years old. That to me is not a senior developer. And an architect could also be a young person, right? Somebody that truly understands how all the pieces fit together. Like they're the ones that know how to make these things work. So
I will say, I've always personally hated the titles junior developer and senior developer, only because it does immediately draw age.
Yeah.
Because you think of like, well, how long have you been doing this, right?
Right.
And that's a measure of time, and it's not necessarily because you immediately think of a measure of time and not instead of a measure of skill. I've never liked those titles.
So kind of like the Amazon way, where they'll have like a software development engineer 1, 2, and 3. That you'd prefer more like that, right? Like you've gone up the levels, as opposed to which
Like
sophomore,
okay,
junior.
if you were a fellow, all right,
Right.
that's a title that that's the highest title that you could have at Microsoft and at IBM. I'm not sure where else, but that's an example of like that one doesn't bother me. I guess that one's probably not
It's not as
too
clear though.
friendly for women. I don't know if they
Right.
would want to be called a fellow,
Interesting.
but that's the only. That title, as an example, though, doesn't bother me as bad as junior and senior.
Yeah. So just food for thought.
Yep.
Well, let us know what you think.
Yeah, definitely. Hey. All right. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the first section: technological judgment. How to tell the hard from the impossible.
Love this part because apparently everything I do is impossible. So it basically boils down to the quote here is, from the point of view of most working programmers, something is impossible if it is either it cannot be grown from a simple system or it cannot be estimated. So I'm either bad at estimating or I do the impossible all the time. They do go on to describe better. I just kind of plucked that out because it was funny. But the example that I really liked from this section, talking about what they mean, is basically if you kind of imagine that you had a system where your goal was to compute the most attractive hairstyle, style, and color for a person, then that's an impossible problem. And your job as a programmer is to take that impossible goal and say, well, you know what? If we did this and we did that, we could maybe solve this solution or solve this problem 75% of the way. And that's enough to make a lot of money and keep this ball rolling.
And
So your job is to, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, you're right. That was one of the interesting things about this is impossible didn't mean that it couldn't be done. It meant that there was no way to scope the thing, right? That's really what it all seemed to be is, okay, if you start trying to build this, enormous thing, but you have no way to scope it down to where you can ever make any tangible progress, then it's impossible.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, one of the sections that I had made note of was if there's not a crisp definition of success, you will not succeed. Which kind of goes
So
in
your
line
job
with
is to
what.
define that.
Yeah, exactly. It goes in line with what Joe was saying. Was that you take this vague requirement that's impossible to meet, and then you start whittling away at it until you can make a clear definition of this is the goal line.
Yep.
If we get here,
Imagine
we're good.
Sorry, I'm bad about stepping today. Sorry, guys. We need to get a little buzzer for me. But I was just thinking, Google's kind of primary function is to help people find things. That's an impossible problem. But searching things based on backlinks or say Google Maps, those are partial solutions to an impossible problem.
Right.
And they work
Matching on
pretty dang
keywords.
well.
That's iterating,
Yep.
right? You iterate towards creating something impossible. And so that makes the other things, doable. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
All right, well, let's move on to how to utilize embedded languages,
Huh?
right?
Yeah, I got a little lost on this one, but then I started. Well, it wasn't so much lost; it's just I've never had an experience with really embedding a language into something, and so I kind of struggled with it initially until I thought about. There were definitely been times when I've exposed SQL and some sort of back admin piece, or even some JavaScript functionality, but
Well,
it's not really the same thing.
it's funny that you said SQL because when I was thinking of a very similar type of example but I also added into that HTML because there have been some maybe gross times or APIs or UIs where like that kind of thing has been exposed to allow a user to add or edit or whatever, but I've never had the case where like he was talking about embedding a language into like a text editor, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I haven't had the need to do that.
Same here. Like what this whole section struck me as is like Sublime with being able to do macros or something in there, like writing your own things. And I don't know. Like I've never really decided to do it. And one of the important things he points out in here is it's dangerous to do it to a certain degree. Because if you try to embed a language in something, let's say that you create your own text editor, right? And you embed a language in there, is that something other programmers are going to want to learn? Especially if it's not something common.
Well,
If
that
it's-
was why he was saying use one that's already already
Right.
existed. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things is if you're trying to do it, and text editors are the things that come to mind because like your Notepad++, your Sublime Text, other IDEs typically have some sort of scripting language in them that you can use to leverage things. So that was the closest thing that I could think here. And the other thing would be like if you're actually doing truly embedded programming on a device, like IoT might become a big deal with this kind of thing here in the near future.
I
Yeah.
also thought video games like Warcraft has, I think, Lua embedded into it, so people can make modifications or mods, and they basically limit the features of the language and kind of lock it down to a sandboxed environment. But people like game developers, who work for Blizzard, can do things with this environment for their UI, but also they, allow the people to use a portion of that language to make their own stuff.
Well, I mean, even if it wasn't like a full on language, let's just say it was just more of like a I think you made a reference to like a scripting type language. Like let's just say if it was something of a markup style, right? Have you ever had a situation where like you've created your own quote markup for some simple field, and to tell the user like, hey, maybe you don't want to give them access to raw HTML or something like that, right? And so you give them something of a templating type of markup that they could use, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
then that's something else that they have to learn. And he makes this great point of saying like, hey, it's a joy to create a new language, right? But we should not let that blind us to the needs of the user, right? So, you might think that creating that new templating, engine in this case, I hate to call it that, but
Pretty close.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever that scripting templating style language is, like you're having fun and you think that you might be helping people, but really are you? Because now you're giving them something else to learn. Now, in that statement that I just said, how many JavaScript frameworks did I just insult because they created a new templating framework?
Handlebars.
Mustache.
Shit, yeah.
Right.
It goes on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
But people like learning new JavaScript frameworks every day. All right. So, all right. So the next one is choosing languages, right?
Yeah, I thought this was interesting too. I do feel like this kind of almost should be choosing languages and frameworks now. And if I were a better person, I might consider doing a pull request because choosing languages, like a lot of times, and for a lot of companies, there's not a whole lot of choice. You've either kind of bought into one ecosystem or another, and so your language choices are usually pretty limited. And a lot of it depends on things like cost, hireability, stability of the platform. the future, how's it, all sorts of stuff, licensing. So choosing an actual language doesn't really seem that important to me. But whether I'm going to go with, say, Ember or Angular, now that's a decision that I'm much more likely to make in the next couple months or, whatever.
Well, you say Angular. I'm sorry, Alan.
No, go ahead.
But there was one quote in here that I know is going to, drive it home for Alan here. That often managers are driven by the need to be able to hire programmers with experience in a given language. And Angular was the one thing that came to mind right away.
Yeah, and here's the truth of it, right? Like, you can try and do that, but inevitably, you may or may not. It's hit or miss, right? Like, hiring for a particular language, you don't know the skill set of that person until they get in there. And that's the God's honest truth for any of it. So, but I did, before we go too far, like, he was kind of brutal on this one. Like, one of the things I highlighted was, generally, this issue is dictated by pointy-haired bosses who are making a political decision rather than a technological decision, and lack the courage to promote an unconventional tool, even when they know, often with first-hand knowledge, that the less accepted tool is best. Now, I do want to say, to be fair, a lot of times these pointy-haired bosses don't really have a choice.
No, wait a minute. We gotta believe that he's talking about Dilbert here.
He
right?
is, absolutely, right? But that's kind of what I'm saying, though. Like, I mean, to what Joe's point was a minute ago, if you are a Microsoft shop, are you just going to go do Java? Like, are you going to invest in a whole new set of tools when you're on the entire Windows platform?
But the crazy thing is, though, is it happens.
It does. All the time.
sometimes there'll just be like a regime change, and the new manager will come in, and he's like, you know what? I want to change this. This is the platform that I like. I've used this elsewhere, and I don't care what we're doing here. We're changing everything to move to this platform. So it does happen.
It does, and
I don't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah, I mean,
because sometimes I think that the reasoning isn't necessarily coming from the right place.
Yeah,
I could see pointy-haired boss. A programmer comes in and says, "Hey, we need to do this in, say Lisp or what's something cool, or Cylon or Rust or something," and the pointy-haired boss is thinking, you know what? There's a good chance you're quitting in the next year and a half, and I'm going to have to find someone else to take this on. And no.
But I will say this, though, and he brings up a very, very good point down here. And this kind of goes back to our junior versus senior level developer type thing. He says, to beginners and to some outsiders, learning a new language seems a daunting task. But after you have 3 under your belt, it's really just a question of becoming familiar with the available libraries. And let's be honest, that's pretty accurate, right?
It is.
Unless you go to different types of languages. So if you're doing a functional versus an OO or a scripting, then there are nuances there. But otherwise, jumping from C# to Java is not that difficult.
I mean, I questioned where the 3 came from.
Yeah,
that was
trivial.
The thing.
Even 1.
Because if you know 1
yes.
extremely well inside and out, then going from C# to Java,
it's nothing.
You're not going to struggle too much on that.
No. If anything, it's the frameworks, like what Joe said. Like, this should almost be titled choosing a language or a framework, right? Like, if you jump from I don't know, Spring into something else, it's a totally different ball game.
He did make the comment though about learning a language is not learning a programming language isn't too far from learning, or any more difficult than learning a natural language,
right?
A foreign language. And I remember being in school, and I always question, like, hey, if I'm in this programming class, why am I not getting foreign language credit? Because I can speak this. Can you?
Right.
Right. Like, what's the difference? Right.
There's another thing that he said here that I thought was pretty spot on. Is he said one tends to think of a large system that has components in 3 or 4 languages as being a messy hodgepodge. But I argue that such a system is in many cases stronger than a one-language system in several ways. And he goes on to list some bullet points. There is necessarily loose coupling. It has to be, right? You don't have an option. You can evolve to a new language or platform easily by rewriting each component individually. It is possible that some of these modules are actually up to date. So those are pretty interesting things. And that also goes back to using languages for what they're strong for.
Right.
Like some languages
Using the best tool for the job.
Yes. I mean, some are very good at parallel programming, threading, and that kind of stuff, right? Others are better for, I don't know, scripting out cron jobs or whatever the case may be. Like, there's
I mean,
so...
Perl got its name just for string manipulation,
Right. So
or that where it's made its name.
there's nothing wrong with using the right tool for the job. And one of the things that is very important about this is you can also keep your programmers happy if you allow them to explore these
Yes.
things, right? And keeping morale high among programmers, and I think we talked about this in the previous podcast, is a big deal, right? Like, happy people produce better work. That's all there is to it.
There was one point though in this section that I really didn't agree with, and this kind of goes back to the previous section. But he says that when you're trying to choose a language, if it can be embedded, you should always consider it. And going back to the point that you just made, like, why? If it's not, pick the best tool for the job,
Yeah.
and that best tool for the job might not necessarily be, something that could be embedded.
Right.
And really, how often do you need to embed something? And if we're thinking about, if we're putting our like OWASP security hats on, do you want it to be embeddable?
Right. Right.
Think about that.
Look at Java applets now.
All right, let's move on. The compromising wisely here. So, how to fight schedule pressure.
Yes, and so I actually had my own little list of things here, but I first wanted to mention that the thing I got out of this the most, I guess, the section. So, what will you give up to get the thing that you want? Which is, I feel like, the best response you can give to someone whenever scope creep comes up. Like, all right, what am I deprioritizing in order to get this done?
Yeah. I mean, the part that I thought was so key and a lot of people don't realize is when business owners or managers or whatever are trying to put this pressure on you, they believe that asking for it sooner will make us work harder to get it there sooner. And this is probably true, but the effect is very small and the damage is very great. You create burnout when you do this, right?
Right.
Like when you apply that pressure, somebody's going to work themselves to the bone. The quality of work might even go down because they can't focus as well. And after they're done with that, and then you hit them with the next one and they try to apply schedule pressure again, motivation starts dropping off a cliff.
Yeah, well, I was going to actually address that because he mentions there's time to market pressure, which is good pressure, right?
Yep.
That's the pressure to deliver something quickly, because there's a financial realization there, right? But there's the schedule pressure to deliver something, and that's bad because that's just arbitrarily you've decided, hey, we need to get this done in the next 3 weeks.
There was another statement he put in here that I actually really liked. You can't pack more into a span of time any more than you can pack more water into a container over and above the container's volume, right? You can't do more than time will allow you to. In a sense, a programmer should never say no, but rather say, what will you give up to get that thing you want? Which is exactly what Joe said. There's time, resources, and there's cost. Yeah, so money. There's that 3-pronged pyramid, and as you drag one point out,
Right.
the other two become either longer. Like as you stretch these things, one gets really short and the other two get really long. So which two are you willing to give on?
Right. And he calls labor an almost incompressible fluid.
Yep.
So you can't squeeze any more out of that because at some point, your developers are just going to lose, the morale. Like you said, the morale's going to go down. They're going to get tired. As they get tired, they're going to make mistakes. Yeah.
And that cost may not necessarily be financial. There's also, mental and physical costs to working a lot of hours.
Yeah, I mean, if you burn out your team, then your team isn't going to want to hang around, right?
Yep. And they even say asking somebody to do something that basically is impossible is demoralizing. It's just like if you're standing at the base of that hill and you look up and there's no end in sight. Like you don't even want to start climbing it, right? Like the,
Oh,
It's like, I'm
man.
not going to make it, and someone's going to be yelling at me the whole time.
That's kind of the way I feel every time I'm at the bottom of the hill on a bike, and I'm like, oh my god, I got to climb that.
that's why I don't get
That's
on bikes.
impossible. Nobody can ride that. And then someone goes past me, and I'm like, dang it. All right, fine, let's go.
All right. So,
All right, let's move on to how to understand the user.
Love it.
do you
I really
really?
did like this section.
Do-
Yep. There's been so many times when I thought I understood what needed to happen, and or I talked with the person paying the bill for the project, and they thought they knew what needed to happen. And you get to actually meet and see how people who really use your software interact with it, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, I could make this so much easier with just a few little tweaks. That your life could be so much better.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he makes a point here saying that like it's your duty to understand the user and to help your boss understand the user. And the more time you spend with users, the better you will be able to understand what it will be to really be successful for them.
Absolutely. If you watch them work, I've found it immensely useful to where if you are doing something for a particular department or a set of users, just go sit down and watch over their shoulder and see what they're trying to, like the biggest problem. And he even touches on it here is he's like, they usually think of small improvements that they can make, right? Because they're used to doing a job a certain way. And that's what they think like. It's your job as an advanced developer to know the end game, right? You're trying to get from point A to point Z. They think about all their little steps that they do, and so they kind of miss out on the big picture. And it's basically your job to say, "Oh, I see what you're trying to do, and I know a way to make this immensely better," as opposed to creating all these little micro enhancements, right?
Right.
Also, a side effect is as you get to know the user better, they get to know you better. And so they may be more sympathetic, or they may, listen to the things that you tell them a little bit more intently rather than distrusting. Or it's just basically building a good relationship. If you say, I can do that, but I don't think you're going to like it, and you just have to trust me, then, they might be more prone to do that if you've, built that relationship up and there's trust there.
Yeah, I mean, he makes the point of just saying, just to hang out with them. Just getting to
Absolutely.
know them better.
Go to lunch.
It doesn't have to necessarily be like what you were describing, Alan, about watching them, but just as long as you get to know them, because then, kind of to Joe's point, they'll be more willing to share as well.
Absolutely. Oh, before we move on to the next section, I want to bring up a topic that our friend John, we had a discussion at lunch one day, and I don't know if it was in the previous one in our intermediate or if it was in the beginning, we talked about scope creep, and he made a very good point. And it's funny because as developers, it can be really frustrating for scope creep, right? But he made a great point. Scope creep is the business owner or the end user's way of trying to integrate or iterate on the problem, right? Like we talk about as software developers, like you can't just try and start off with this huge idea. You have to have this MVP, or you have to iterate towards something, right? That is the business owner's way of doing that. And that's why scope creep happens. So it was a very important point to bring up that, there's two sides to any kind of software development, right? There's the user who needs something, and then there's the developer who's trying to create something. And so scope creep can be frustrating, but you just need to figure out a way to implement it. And that's where like Agile and those type of things have come into play, right? Because you have these shorter sprints to where, hey, a user says, I do need that. Okay, well, let's try and work it into this sprint or get it into the next sprint. And so that's kind of the valuable part of that. But I did want to bring it up because I thought it was a great point that he made, in that if you cut out scope creep, you've kind of cut the legs off the user who's actually looking to get this delivered product.
Yeah, I mean, I like that explanation a lot. But the frustration of it is that while you might be all on board for doing that, but then the reality is like, well, we're trying to get this feature out today. Can we push that feature out tomorrow?
Right.
Because if I gotta try to fit that into today's schedule, like I'm not going to be able to get today's feature out either. So I'm going to fail on both. So can I have like micro successes and get one? And that's where it gets to be frustrating.
And totally. And that's a good point. And that's where like the old waterfall approach was really bad, right? Because you'd spend a year specking out this program, and then you lock that document, right? And then it's like, okay, you're going to develop it to this. Well, business needs change over time. And so that becomes a problem. And that's why I think something like Agile is a lot better. Maybe it's not perfect.
So
but
if you had a time machine, okay,
Yep.
you're Marty McFly.
Yes, I am.
You jump in your DeLorean, and you hit 88 miles per hour.
Yes. 21.1 gigawatts.
And someone's trying to tell you about waterfall. 20. Let's say it was 20 years ago.
Man,
You could be the guy that invents Agile. You could be that guy.
I don't know if I want to be that guy.
Oh, okay. Well, and this is why we still have waterfall in our history.
Thanks.
Thanks, man.
I mean, what are your
This is
thoughts
why
on
we
that?
can't have nice things like
Right?
time travel.
What are your thoughts?
Nothing ever goes away, right? Like waterfall's never going away. Agile's never going away. Whatever comes next is never going away. Like it's just piling on, man. It's a big old mess of spaghetti.
It'll be
and that's why programmers get paid
it'll
well.
be an agile waterfall.
All right. Agile fall.
Agile fall.
Agile fail.
We've just created the next one.
All right, let's move on
Yep.
to how to get a promotion. Yes, please.
Join our Slack. This topic actually comes up quite a bit, and it kind of ties back to the whole junior senior developer. When is it time? Do you need to change jobs to get a promotion? Do you need to, be doing the job before you get the promotion? Do you just need to talk to your boss? Like, does there need to be a formal, process with well-defined, rules for getting that role? Depends on where you're at.
Yeah. I mean, and I think we kind of hit on this recently too. I don't remember.
I think it was the last episode, I believe.
Was it?
I think so. But yeah, we did recently.
Yeah, because I remember the conversation was something along the lines of like the fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah, you start doing
Yep.
the job of what you want to be. But there was another part. So yeah, we did talk about that, and I think that's a good piece of advice. But there was another piece of advice in here that's golden that I think way too many people ignore. Ask your boss what you need to do to get that promotion.
Right.
Like a lot of times in your mind, you think that you just need to be, doing awesome software, right? And in some places, maybe that'll get you the next promotion. But maybe your boss is looking for you to be a leader and to start organizing things or whatever. It's hard to know. Ask your boss. He can tell you what's in his mind. Now, the uncomfortable truth may be that, hey, I don't think you're ready for it.
Yeah,
You
you might not like what you hear.
You may not. It may be, hey, dude, I don't like your work ethic. You're not pulling your weight. You're not doing this, whatever. But you'll never know unless you ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, although another kind of point, there was a podcast or a book or something I shouldn't even mention because I don't remember what it is. So anyway,
Nice job.
ultimately your boss just wants to look better, right? Everyone's accountable to somebody. So if it's ultimately a lot of times a promotion isn't necessarily about you so much as it is what you can provide to your organization. So if you can figure out how to ask your boss or talk to your boss or whoever about what they need fulfilled, then that's a great way, as Owen say, of getting that promotion or getting where you want.
Well, also, kind of in the vein of making people happy, though, if there's no visibility into what you're doing, right, then it's easy for them to not appreciate your efforts, right? And so he makes a point that if you work remote, then sometimes that can be more difficult to accomplish, to make what you're doing more visible to your boss and to your peers, right?
It really can. And I think this also might be showing a little bit of the age of the document, because at least nowadays there are a ton of tools to help with that, right? Like you can have face-to-face meetings with people that are a country away. And
I don't think it shows the age of the document at all.
you
Because
don't think so?
No, because you could still be working remote, and if you're not, it's still the onus is on you
Yes.
to call it out, to call out your successes.
Okay, yeah. Good
So
point.
if all you do is just, submit pull requests and you submit 15 a day, but you never make a point of like, hey, here's this new feature I added. How's anyone to know?
Yeah, you got to
Right?
be a good salesman. Like, I guess one of the big things that a lot of people don't understand about a promotion is you have to sell yourself, right? You have to be a good salesman for yourself. And that might mean creating a presentation to show what you did, or setting up a meeting to where you can say, hey, look at this feature that we've got that's going to help X, Y, and Z out, right? There's nothing wrong with doing stuff like that, and it will help you out tremendously throughout your career.
Yep. And I also like that they say to get a pay raise, negotiate armed with information, which is basically what you're talking about. But it'd be nice if you can go into that quarterly review or whatever and say, you know what? I worked on the 3 biggest, bestest features that we released this year, and I did a super job. So hook me up.
Hey, and if you can put some metrics to it, like, what I did just increased our profitability by 10%. That's a huge thing, right?
And that was a point that we addressed. I think it was in the last episode as well that, because I made the point of pointing out, and
I pointed very well.
Yeah, apparently better than I am right now. I used the e-commerce as an example where like that's an easier situation to where you could say, hey, I implemented this feature, and that feature after implementing that feature, we saw X amount of dollars, right? And that's something that, like, when you can quantify that in a number like that, then everyone can understand it.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be dollars. Like, it could be, I took this processing time down from 8 hours to 5 minutes. That was an increase of, a gazillion % or something.
Average session time.
Yeah, I mean,
bounce rates. I mean, there's a ton of different ways that you can measure that. It doesn't have to be dollars.
Yeah, and all these metrics, I think the key is, and we've discussed this on Slack as well, ironically enough, is be able to quantify things. Don't say, well, how much money did you make? A lot.
Yeah.
A lot to Bill Gates is how much.
Right.
A lot to you is how much, right? A lot is so generic and non-informative.
I guess from my own experience, though, the reason why I say that use the dollars as an example, though, is that there have been situations where maybe it was something like, hey, we implemented this feature and our average session time increased, or, bounce rates went down or whatever. And, the response is, okay, but so what? But if you can say, well, X amount of more dollars, like we brought in, I don't know, let's say it was $100,000 more this month because of this feature.
Right.
Then it's hard for them to argue and say it doesn't matter, because you can say, well, that's a 6-figure number bigger than what it was last month,
right.
So it matters,
and,
right?
And if you equate that out over a year, that's $1.2 million, right? So, and by the way, for those of you who have no idea what he meant when he said bounce rate, that's generally a website type term. If you come to the site and you leave from that first page, that's a bounce. That's somebody that did not go any further than the first page they landed on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say to that.
How about I just automated accounting and you were able to lay off 20 people because of me? High five.
And everybody hates Joe now.
Yeah, your car is keyed and your tires are flat, so you're walking home.
You jest about that, but I'm not kidding you. I have a buddy who got fired because he literally automated a job that like 4 or 5 people were doing in a department. He automated that job, had it done, like literally their entire job done in seconds that would take them days to do. And he got fired.
Why?
Because
that's crazy.
Because he worked for one of the people that he just kind of replaced with that thing that he wrote, right?
Nice.
And so that's kind of an important thing to know. Like, you kind of need to know your target audience as well. But
I mean, I've definitely been in situations where, especially as a consultant, and you arrive and you're tasked with doing something, right? And you start going around to some of the end users and talking to them and asking questions, kind of like what we were talking about in the previous section about getting to know the user, right? And there's definitely this vibe from them about like, oh crap, you're about to automate my job, aren't you?
But you know what? Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, just the point being is that there's that vibe there, and sometimes it's difficult trying to just overcome that.
Yes.
Like, and kind of reassure them without actually coming out and saying like, hey, I'm not here to get rid of your job.
Right.
That's not what I do.
That's what I was going to say. That's part of being this advanced programmer, is it's almost your job to make them understand that, look, I'm not trying to replace you. I'm trying to enable you to be able to do more things better.
I
right?
mean, it doesn't help that when I start the question with, something along the lines of, so, what exactly would you say you do here, Bob?
Yeah.
I'm the bean counter, right?
I'm a people person.
So what I'm hearing here is I should be sandbagging. So if I don't have good metrics now, then I should put out a feature, throw some sleeps in there, and then a couple months later, I take those sleeps out and I can say, hey, I improved performance 30%.
By
know-
the way, that is the same as reporting off JIRA statistics.
If you get it into a pull request and no one notices, then maybe. But I have a feeling that when you go to remove it, someone's going to notice. So you might want to be a little bit more clever about it than just doing a sleep.
That's awesome.
So you got to get your buddies in on it. Okay.
Whoever the pull request approver is.
I'm pretty sure that minification is going to be involved, and that way you could just cram a bunch of stuff into the code, and then a month later delete it all and be like, "Hey, look, I removed 20% of the page weight."
That's awesome.
Yep.
All right. This episode is sponsored by Dev Bootcamp. Thinking about becoming a software developer? Check out Dev Bootcamp, the original short-term immersive software development program that transforms those new to coding into job-ready, full-stack web developers. Learn front and back-end web development, teamwork, and leadership skills in a rigorous and inclusive environment. Dev Bootcamp has several locations around the country and is accepting applications now. Visit devbootcamp.com/codingblocks to learn more. All right. So we've been having some fun with the surveys, and I want to have some more today. So you guys haven't cheated, have you? You haven't looked at the results yet, right?
Man, how do you think I got through college?
Okay. So going back to that education conversation, Joe, did you?
Why do you always ask this question? Do you want me to lie to you?
Oh my God, you guys! Don't you know the
It's like you're
rules
setting
by
me
now?
up. I didn't look.
I didn't either.
You liars! All right. Well, last survey was girl power, the princess rap battle, and I can never pronounce her name.
Galadriel.
What?
Galadriel.
Okay. Well, her versus Leia. Who wants to take Mrs. G versus Leia? Oh,
I prefer Leia, but I Miss G. She dropped the Alderaan bomb.
okay.
What can Leia say to that?
Right. Alan, who do you think was the winner?
Leia.
Leia?
Yep.
Well, only one of you's right, and it's Alan
Woohoo!
by a long
She
shot.
has a blaster, man.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. How can you beat lasers?
That's what I'm saying. Especially
Leia
lasers
is way
that you can
cooler.
see.
Yeah. It was like more than 3/4 of the votes were for Leia.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely the popular choice was Leia.
Nobody wants some fantasy chick beating Leia. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm definitely more when it comes to sci-fi, I definitely like the sci part better than the fi part.
Yep. Although I'm not really even sure who Galadriel is, even though I've read all of those books.
She was the person in the rap battle with Leia.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe one of that. Maybe she was an elf. I don't know.
So, yeah, I hated that whole series. I know that probably just upset a lot of people, but it's out there. I thought it was horrible. All right, so we won't make that the next survey, though. But what the next survey is on one of my favorite topics, Git. And we had this conversation in the Slack channel. Again, if you want to join, hit us up with an email, specifically with the email that you want us to send the invite to, either at comments@codingblocks.net or hit us up on DM on Twitter. And the conversation was whether or not to squash your commits, right? So to squash or not to squash, that is the question. And you're
Talking about racquetball?
no, we're talking about Git. I already said that part. You weren't listening? All right.
Sorry, I cracked myself up.
Man, no, is this microphone... James, can you hear me? Is this... Okay. All right. So your choices are...
Wait. First.
Oh, okay.
Are you going to explain what that is?
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right. You're
to
right.
squash
you're
or not
right,
to squash? What?
Fine. Okay, so a little backstory here. If let's say you are in, let's speak specifically to Git. You have, let's say 10 commits that it took you to implement some feature, right? And now it comes time to put a pull request together and submit that pull request. Now, you could, using Git, squash all of those 10 commits into one nice commit, and that way the people reviewing it only see the one commit, and when they look through their Git log after that feature gets later merged into the master or whatever the main trunk is called, then they only see that feature as one commit in the Git log, right? So it makes it easy from that point of view. Or you could not squash those commits and just leave the 10 commits as they are, put your pull request together. Now there's 10 commits. And then when it gets merged into whatever the main trunk is, now there's 10 commits for the implementation of that feature, right? So your questions for the survey are, your options for the survey are, I squash because I care, or everyone can learn from my path, so I don't squash, or wait, what?
Okay, but I do want to clarify something here. There's actually a slight little nuance.
All right.
So the squash does take all your commits, your 10 commits, puts it into one, right? So you just literally see, here's where I started and here's where I ended up. That's it. You see no intermediate stuff. However, the not squash does not imply that your stuff will be linear, like you're just going to see it played out. In order to do that, you would have to rebase.
Yeah, this is not a rebase
Right.
conversation.
But I just wanted to point out that if you're working on a team with a bunch of different people and you don't do anything except put in a pull request, then it's going to be extremely difficult to actually see your path at all, because it's going to be so intertwined and interlaced with other commits.
Right. There have been times where people, I've heard people or read where people have confused the topics and will confuse or think that squashing and rebasing go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And they don't. If you rebase, what that is doing is it undoes your 10 commits. It merges in whatever branch you're merging in, and then it replays your 10 commits on top of it, and those 10 commits get new commit IDs as part of that process, right?
And so when you look back in the history, you'll now see those 10 commits in order. So, for instance, if you worked on your branch for...
I guess you're trying to talk me into not squashing.
No, I'm not trying to talk you into not squashing. I'm just saying that I think that it should be squash or don't squash with rebase, so that, because there's really no value to not squashing if you're not going to line your commits up, because you can't follow it. Like, it's straight up.
Wait, there's not value in squashing?
No,
if you're not going to.
There's not value in not squashing in this survey if you're not going to rebase, because what I'm saying is if you rebase,
I say that there's not.
See.
I say, okay, so here's my opinion. Okay. And I'm not trying to sway the jury, but
he's going to.
But I'm going to. And so what I say is that, if you should, if you can, unless you just can't for some reason, then I say that you should. And here's my reason, is that I don't care if you do rebase it or not. Clearly rebasing your 10 commits on top would be better than not. But I don't care what your thought process was to implement that feature. What I care about is the feature. The end state of the feature is what matters. Your journey to it isn't important. And if that doesn't sway your opinion, Git bisect should. Because now, let's picture 3 months have gone by and I need to do a Git bisect because I'm trying to figure out some problem, or maybe not 3 months, but however, some duration of time has gone by, and now I land at one of your partial commits that may be incomplete. Hopefully it compiles and works. It's not going to help me to bisect the problem that I was originally trying to, because now I've landed on a partial feature. So that doesn't help me.
Hey, where's that bisect button in the GitHub app? I'm not seeing it.
What Joe said.
No, but for real, sometimes the path is important. Have you ever done something and say you do it version 1, and as you're about to check in the ticket, boss says, no, do it this way. And so you do version 2. Now, if you squash those changes and then 2 days later, your boss says, whoa, sorry, version 1.
That's
And
very
if
legit.
you squash those commits, lost.
That is a very different story that he's describing. Yes, because he's describing iteration.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about iteration.
Yeah.
We're talking about like you're developing a feature, right? And that feature took you 10 commits to develop that feature, and now you put the pull request together. If you're at the point of already putting the pull request together, then the feature is done, right?
Yo,
And
man,
if
I work on some things that change during the day.
No, I actually agree with Joe on this because I've totally been there to where you're not ready to put the pull request together, but it has changed. And so what you're saying is if you get to a point to where you can put a pull request together and that didn't happen, we'll say, then you squash it. Like, I'm on board with that. But what he's saying is you're working on something, you show it to your boss, and he's like, I want you to go in this direction. And so you keep developing now. If you squash that when you now put the pull request in after your boss has changed his mind 3 times, you lose all that
but
history.
You're not putting the pull request together until he okayed it.
That's what I'm saying. So now you're going to lose all that history
No.
because
You're missing the point. You're missing the point. During none of this time have you put the pull request together. You're saying you developed a feature, you went to get sign off from your boss, he didn't like it, he wanted some change, so you make his change, right? Now you should be getting sign off from him again.
You're
before
committing.
you put you're committing, but before you put the pull request in, you get sign off from him. Hey, do you like this? He doesn't like it. Now you can still revert back to your commit.
No, you put the pull request in. He wants it.
so you're
Tomorrow, tomorrow
Yeah,
he
pull
says,
request is in the middle.
Yeah, no, tomorrow he's like, no, wait, you know what? That's not what we wanted. Go back. You can't.
No.
You can't. Right?
You do lose history. I mean, I change stuff all the time. Like, I'll do something one way, and then an hour later, I do it another way, and then I go back because I'm crazy and don't think ahead sometimes. And so it is nice to have that history. But my solution to that is to squash my pull request and then keep the local branch so that I have those changes unsquashed so I can do that.
Keeping the local branch can help this. So to the survey, though, I mean, I think we should do the survey, but
he's describing a tool, though. Hold on, let's be careful there because the way that Joe's describing that is he's depending on the tool that he's using for the pull request, right? Specifically, I know he's referring to Visual Studio Team
to
Services.
squash it?
He's relying on
Right,
them
yeah.
to do the squashing because if you're
point.
doing your squashing by
Local.
command line locally,
It kills
then local branch doesn't matter. You've already done
Right.
it unless you're going to like branch it into a new directory or clone it into a new directory.
oh, that's a good point.
You know,
You could branch the branch, but yeah.
you could
it's
branch
getting a
the
little crazy.
branch or
But then it's just a mess, right? Trying to keep up
Yeah,
with
don't
everything.
branch your branch and do
So,
it. that way.
so I mean, I just wanted to lay all that out there, though, to make sure because a lot of people don't even know what this rebasing versus squashing and all that stuff is, and so I wanted people to actually understand what you get and what you lose in both of those cases. And honestly, to me, not to sway, I'm on the fence. Like, it depends on what I'm working on. Like, if I've been working on something for 3 months and I've had to make a bunch of changes along the way, and I haven't put in a pull request yet because this is a feature branch, I'm not squashing that commit. I'm going to keep the entire history all the way up.
Yeah.
Now, if it's something that's like a week long, I'm gonna be like, squash it. You know, whatever. It was something that was relatively quick to do. Squash it. I don't care. But I'm not losing 3 months worth of work with 50,000 changes in between just because I want one clean commit, man. Git can keep those diffs and they can be happy with it. And if you want to bisect it and you don't know how to go past my broken commit, you need a better tool.
no, but that's actually not a fair statement. That's not a fair statement because if you're bisecting and at the point where you're bisecting at that commit, if it's a broken build, for example,
Okay.
then what are you supposed to do, right? Like you can't evaluate whether or not what you were trying to fix, the problem that you were trying to inspect and dissect. You can't evaluate whether or not that commit
is what caused the problem.
Is
right?
is before or after the problem was there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, like I said, I'm actually on the fence. This is one of those situations where I say there's no one size fits all type thing. Like, it really boils down to what kind of development you've been doing, how quickly it's been done, and that kind of thing. Like, to me, like, I'm not going to squash every time, and I'm not going to rebase every time, and I'm not going to, just simply do the same thing over and over. It really depends on what my workflow was leading
Well,
up to that.
fairness,
pull
I
request.
wasn't taking like an absolutist point of view that you have to do it every time. I said if
I
you
think
can.
you were.
But I guess my point though is that more often you can.
More often, especially if it's a quick feature, right? Like if it's something you knock out in a day or two, more than likely, there's no reason to
All
keep.
right, so
the
in your
history
next
on
pull request, I'm going to see it squashed.
that. I'm going to use that button online to do it.
I was gonna say, like, I squash if there's a convenient checkbox for it.
Wow.
Roger that.
All right.
So
Well-
wait, did we ever finish the? Well, yeah, you did. You did. You got them all out there.
Yeah. The three options: I squash because I care, or Alan's approach. Everyone can learn from my path. And then Joe's approach is, wait, what?
Yeah, it's like next time someone says, "You know what, man? I'm trying to bisect this stuff, and it's a big mess because of all your commits." You just need to say, "You know what? You need to learn from my path. you need to study up, give it a good look."
There's value in my mistakes. You can learn from them.
Oh, that's
Like, I can't teach you principles, man.
oh no. I have a feeling we're gonna hear about this one.
Oh man, I'm going to go ahead and move us along to serving your team and how to develop talent. So I got to say right here, like he says, "What does not destroy me makes me stronger," and all I could think of was Kanye. So for the rest of the section, I got this song like playing in my head.
Oh man. Well,
Yeah, I've never been a fan of that analogy or saying because I could think of a lot of things that would be so much worse that wouldn't actually destroy me.
I mean, stretch them not by giving them more work, but by giving them a new skill, or better yet, a role to play on the team. I like that. I actually really do like that. Like anytime that I've tried to help bring like juniors up and try and get them to do better, or junior level developers, or people that are trying to learn, whatever the case may be. Like
I just saw like Grandpa Allen here. Every time I'm trying to bring the juniors up.
yeah, that's right. So, like, my approach was always, okay, you're trying to accomplish whatever this task is. Go do it. I really don't even want to give you any advice. I want you to go do it. So that I can see that you tried, you struggled through it. You're going to learn a lot just by
And that's
doing
a
that.
tough assignment to give to like someone who's fresh out of school. This is their first gig.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's a hard thing. It might be just a
Are we
task
going
like
back to the impossible thing?
no, this is more like, okay, I need you to change a label, right? Something like that. It could be just a very small task, but I want you to go figure out how to do it. And then when they come back, if they did a good job, I'm going to be like, hey, that's excellent. If it could be improved upon, I'm going to be like, hey, this really isn't that important of a thing right now to where we have to have it today. I want you to see if you can improve upon that. And let's do it by doing X, Y, and Z, right?
But I can't help but kind of smile and laugh because, like, you mentioned label specifically, and I seem to recall a certain someone who worked in a particular framework where it took, I don't know, how many days was it?
Dude, Joe laughed at me.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I remember that framework very well.
Man, no, this wasn't fair.
So sometimes if it's a crappy framework that you're working in, changing a label is a harder task than you're making it out to be.
Man, this is
Yep.
no joke. This is when I first met Joe, and he was kind of the guy that I had to go to talk about the things that I'm working on, right? And my very first task was literally changing a label on a page. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like this is ridiculous. Why are they paying me for this, right? Man, I'm not kidding. 2 days later, in a 2-page wiki that I wrote, I had changed the label on the page. And I went to Joe, man. I was like defeated. I was like, dude, look, I apologize. I'm sorry, but Like, I thought this was going to take me 5 minutes, man. He's like, nah. He's like, totally don't worry about it. And I'm like, what are you?
It's like, that's why you got the ticket, man. I knew it would be total hell.
I felt like I'd just been destroyed, right? Like I had been shot by some meteors. It was insane.
Like I said, crappy framework. It could be
Oh,
changing a label. It could be a big problem.
If you hear the letter CMS, beware.
Yeah, there was a couple statements in here. One that I strongly agreed with, and one that I wasn't so on board with. You know, he says that if there's never any failure, there can be no sense of adventure. I'm like, wait, what? No, no, I can definitely have a sense of adventure and sense of accomplishment just by being done early. I don't need to fail.
Yeah, I'll get my adventure in my own time. Thank you.
But I did like the statement that I strongly agree with, which was saying that, you know, if there's not occasional failures, you're not taking enough risks.
Totally agree with that. Totally.
Yep.
You need to get
I also
outside
really
your comfort.
liked,
Go ahead.
He also kind of pushed. He didn't quite phrase it like this, but basically credit out, blame in, and I put parentheses private. And the credit out, blame in is like a 7 habits of effective people thing. But I did like the fact that he was kind of saying the same thing, except that, you know, praise people, you know, give them the high fives in public. And if you got to talk to them about something, do it in quiet, you know, like do it alone. And, you know, don't embarrass anybody. Don't put their, you know, egos on the line. Don't start an argument. So I thought it was kind of cool.
Those are all super important.
Now, again, keep in mind, this is how to develop talent, right? And he says you can't give up on someone who's intentionally not carrying their share of the load,
Yep.
right? Because of low morale or dissatisfaction, right? You can't just let them be slack.
And you must try and motivate them.
Yeah,
And you know what? There's truth to that, and that is very, very difficult to do. Because you, as the person that is trying to motivate them, sometimes it's like everybody else is pulling their weight. Why aren't you? Right? Like,
Yeah, you kind of hate them a little bit.
you do.
Right?
Like, you have a little bit of resentment. It's hard not to.
I think you already go into the situation kind of judgmental, though. Like,
You kind of have a chip on your
it's
shoulder,
going
right?
to be it's going to be what's this person's track record though?
Right.
Has this person has this person brought major, you know, wins for me in the past, or have they not? Because if they haven't, then I might be less inclined. Like if they've brought consistent failures, right? Then I might be less inclined, and which is not the response that he's going after here.
Well, he's
This
saying,
is why I'm probably not the advanced programmer.
But hold on, this is why he's not saying people that have been terrible. He's saying people that are intentionally slacking, right? And there's a difference, right? Like, if you have somebody that's unfortunately the most motivated person in the world, but they just can't seem to put together anything that works,
like a label.
that's, you know, as it happens. No, it worked. It just took me a long time,
Right.
But there's a difference, right? Maybe you just need to find out, hey man, what is it that you want to do? Like, what's going to get you excited? You know, and so maybe that's the approach you have to take. Maybe that person's kind of been backburnered for a long time. Like Joe talked about in the past, like he likes to work on greenfield stuff. A lot of times as an employee, you get stuck with all the old garbage, right? Because you have the business knowledge behind it. So maybe that person's seeing that everybody else is getting to work on this cool stuff and he's just kind of hanging out.
I have a different perspective on life now after 2016 election cycle. I just keep thinking, you know, what would Trump do about a demotivated employee?
You're fired.
All right, next topic.
Yeah, I mean, he does say like when your patience is exhausted and you fire them, but that's what I guess to my point though is this: we're all human, right? You're going to take your past experiences with you, and so if this person has brought successful wins to you, then you're going to be more likely to give them that extra time, right? And work with them that extra bit. But if it's someone who hasn't brought you wins, you know, regardless of why they're slacking, you're going to have less tolerance for it, period. And
Absolutely.
that's just human nature. That's just how we are.
It is. And it's hard not to be that way. Well, the next one we've got is how to choose what to work on. Don't you get to do that every day? You're just like, yo, this is what I'm doing today.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I don't have a whole lot of choice here. I basically, like we're all using ticket managers, right? And they all have priorities. And the only really question for me, when I'm trying to pick my next task is if two things are the same priority, do I go with the one that I think is going to be easier to do or the one that is going to be more more murky and hard to figure out?
Yeah, because the business owners get to decide what we work on.
They do, but I would say that having an open line to your manager or whoever that may be and voicing the kind of things that you enjoy to do can go a long way, right? Like maybe they see that you're busting your tail and they say, "Hey, I know that hey, what's going to make you happy?" If he doesn't reach out to you, it's your job to get in his ear and be like, and I don't mean complain and whine and moan. I mean, hey, I've been working on a lot of this stuff, and I love contributing to the team. But hey, man, could I work on something along this line, right? Like I want to get more involved in databases, or I want to get more involved in this. Can I do that?
So there's that approach, but the approach that I was thinking of that I think I've actually had more success with is just going back to that one about getting to know the users, right?
Yeah.
You get that relationship with the business owner, and you start working out some kind of an idea with them. There's a strong chance that you're going to be involved in, and you're the whole reason. Part of the reason why you're working that idea out with them in the first place is from an interest point of view.
Yep.
Right. So, that can help you be the guy because you're already the go-to guy from the
Business owner's perspective, right?
well, I was trying to not say design perspective, but the guy who was originally trying to sort out the details of it, right? Then a lot of times, more often than not, by default, you get to be the guy to do it. So sometimes it's making your own destiny is really what it comes down to.
And you could even end up leading that project, right? Even if you weren't the lead, if you've got that connection, you could.
Yeah.
He also said to do what you're best at, which I thought was kind of interesting, but also to stretch. So I know that, sometimes I feel like I should do the things I know how to do. But also sometimes it's nice to do something I'm not good at just because, I need to get better at it. And I want those things to be fluent.
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually thought that was kind of an interesting point too, because I've always thought of it from the opposite point of view, which is you should practice the things that you're weaker at to get better at them. And I mean, I've
There's
kind of taken that
diminishing
approach
returns, right?
Huh? What?
There's diminishing returns.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know I've taken that approach with times where they're like you mentioned, here's a few tickets. Which one do I want to work on? And there have definitely been times where I'm like, well, this is an area that I don't touch often, and if I work on this ticket, I can get better at it,
Right.
and that'll pay off in the long run for me.
Yeah, assuming that you like the things that you're not as good at.
That's a good point. I mean, it really is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was thinking more too, like not necessarily like business rules or things like that, but more like technology stacks, right?
Right.
Like, if SaaS isn't your thing, right, but a SaaS ticket comes along, and you're like, well, hey, this gives me an opportunity to increase those skills, right? That's not going to be a bad thing for me, right?
Right.
So it might not be something I want to do day in, day out, but hey,
Nice change of pace.
yeah.
Yep.
All right.
For the next one, how to get the most from your teammates. The obvious answer here is donuts.
I was gonna say.
But I keep control effing and it's not coming up.
I was actually going to say the same thing. You show up
Yep.
on Friday with 24 donuts.
All right, then.
It's
So I
golden.
have one question. Where's my donuts? Apparently, you
Yep.
both wanted to give me some donuts, and I didn't get any.
It's not Friday.
I absolutely would bribe with donuts when it was available to me. I absolutely good reviews.
I expect
I mean, anything.
a shipment of donuts.
Yep.
Respect. Respect's a huge one, right? If everybody respects everybody else, then it's almost like the daddy complex. You don't want to let your friends down or your teammate down. If you've ever played a team sport, like you don't want to be that guy that lost the game because you weren't playing your position. It's the same type thing, right? Like if you have a strong team and usually close team, people go out to lunch. We talked about this before. People that hang out, have the same type morals and beliefs and all that, then that can go a long way to having that effect.
And donuts.
And donuts.
And donuts. And we've mentioned this this concept before, but it came up again about the disagree and commit, right? One of the Amazon principles, and did this guy start Amazon? I'm pretty sure he didn't. But yeah, he made the point about if you don't, sometimes you just need to let your team do things their own way, even if you don't agree, and you can disagree openly, but you need to accept the consensus of the team.
There was another thing that he said that I actually know a very good friend of mine who did this. He says sometimes it occasionally means allowing your teammates to be wrong. So that what they've decided to do is not going to work, but you let them do it anyways because you have to show that you have faith in their decisions and all that kind of stuff. And I actually know a guy who did this at a very high level with one of his high-level managers. This guy wanted to work on a project, and he was like, yeah, I don't think that's a great idea. But the guy, he really wanted to do it. Like, he thought there was going to be a lot there, and he's like, all right, we'll go ahead and do it. And then after he did it, didn't turn out to do what he thought it would, but he was like, you can't let somebody go their entire career and not be able to do some things, right? You sometimes have to let them go. It's almost like having kids to a certain degree. You can't box them all up, right? You got to let them explore and find out what's out there. If you hold everybody down, they're never going to get better at anything they do.
Right. All right. How about how to divide problems? I like to divide by 2. I don't know. Maybe you like to divide by 3.
I liked what he said about dividing early. A lot of times the project will get to the end. There's like 1 week left. It's severely behind schedule, and suddenly it's time to split it up. And so there's a lot of communication. Things get confusing. So I definitely like the idea of kind of from the get go working with someone, or splitting up amongst other people.
Yeah, I mean that. Again, I guess it depends too, because I guess I got so. What would be the way to put this? There was so much like project planning and waterfall type things mentioned in here that I guess I kind of like glossed over things when it came to like project planning again. I was like, oh, not this again.
Yeah, and I think you tend to favor kind of like one person owning like a feature or a thing and that can kind of walk it all the way through to the end, which might involve splitting up, but not so much 50-50 as it might be 90-10, right?
Wait, I am that guy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've mentioned before like the 12-factor apps and stuff that you like the developer to kind of own a feature all the way through to the end, right?
Well, I want you to take ownership of it. Yeah, but you might be, there could be 2 people or more people that are part of that. But yeah, definitely if you wrote some code, you should take ownership of it and not say, well, it doesn't work because I didn't have a unit test and blame it on something else.
Well, what I'm saying, I guess, is like if one person is doing the front, one person is doing the back, you're working on the front, you're owning the front. There's something you see to make it better, but the other person's kind of dragging their feet a little bit on that feature. Like, are you really, are you just going to let it go? Are you going to dive into their code to make that fix? What happens with maintenance? Are you really going to rely on someone else to potentially mess up your feature?
I mean, if I'm working with somebody, if I follow your example correctly, right? Like I'm working on, say, the front end, someone else is working on the server side. There's definitely been times where, I've finished my part ahead of time and I've jumped in to try to help where I can. But that's also a situation too where it's kind of difficult because it's almost like, well, how many hands can you have in the cookie dough before there's too many in there and nobody is able to actually like make cookies, right?
Cookie dough.
Right? Cookies.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And so, yeah, that's why I have a hard time with the 50-50 split for smaller features. But if you kind of have one person who's like running the lead on that feature, then I think that makes sense a little bit. And so, someone else can do part of it. But ultimately, I think one person's really got to kind of take ownership of it. Otherwise it gets to be oh no, there's a bug. And then, it becomes finger pointing time as each person tries to figure out, what needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would I don't have a good answer. Divide by 2
Yep.
and have cookies.
This doesn't even mention pair programming.
Well,
Does anyone actually pair program, or is that just like a thing that Ruby people talk about but never
I've
do?
heard that there are shops that do it, and some of the people that have done it actually like it quite a bit.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, even here in the Atlanta area, there are shops that do it.
it seems sort of crazy to me. I mean, like, I don't know.
I don't know that I've ever done it for an extended period of time. There have definitely been times where I've sat beside someone and we've worked some
Yeah.
problem out, but it was more like
That's a task.
1 or 2 days, to
Yeah.
to complete something, and then you go about your day.
Yeah, but no, like Monday through Friday,
Nah, man.
8 to 5.
Programmers have bad breath. There's no way I could do that all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, man.
I think
There's
are
a
you trying to tell
generality.
me something here, man? Like this is awkward.
Look, man, if there's any programmer on the planet who does not have bad breath, Outlaw spends like $30 a day on gum. There's no,
That's true.
there's no way.
There's no way I have bad breath. I'm
There's
just
no
saying.
way.
All right. Well, how to handle boring tasks?
If somebody knows how, please tell me.
Delegate.
I actually really like the advice here, which is kind of funny because of what we just talked about. But basically, they say split it up. But I don't think that necessarily means split the task up 50-50 like I was saying. But when I think of a boring task, it's kind of like a repetitive thing that's kind of either hard to work on or it's boring but still needs to be babied, or there's some reason why you can't automate it. And so it kind of sucks to give it to one person and have that one person always lugging that around. So if you could split that up, even if it's just one other person and they kind of take turns, it doesn't feel like they're off on their own, carrying this burden.
Well, so there was this quote in here about sometimes it's not possible to avoid boring tasks that are critical to the success of the company or the project. And I immediately, like in my notes here, I wrote down CSS, SAS, and less. Like those are things that you can't avoid in your web application, but yet they're also if you are a designer, then you're probably taking huge offense to what I'm saying here. So it's one of those things that like I'll do it, and it's going back to trying to practice the things that you're not as strong at, right? To increase those skills, I'll definitely do it and gain something from it. But if I had my choice of picking something to do, it's not my most favorite thing. Right?
Well, I think I agree with what Joe said a second ago, and he even puts it, I guess, in so many words. If all else fails, apologize to those who have to do the boring task. That actually goes a little ways to helping, right? Like,
Yep.
dude, I know this stinks, but, we just got to get through it. And then, but under no circumstance allow them to do it alone. And I think that's important, right? Like, don't just stick it on one dude or girl or whatever the case may be, lady, woman, guy. Don't stick one person with it, because it really does feel like, dude, why am I on traffic duty? Why am I the
Yeah.
dude standing out in the middle of the road?
Oh, here's a good example. Localization. Imagine your boss was like, hey, we want to port this thing to Russian. So get to tokenizing.
Google Translate.
Right? I would totally write an API really fast with that.
Yeah.
And then go to every string in the application and swap it out for its appropriate variable.
Man, yeah. See, I'm already asleep.
All right. How to gather support for a project.
This sounds like politics to me.
Yeah, a prototype was mentioned, and I've seen a lot of times when like someone would kind of go off on their own for a weekend and kind of build something and come back and say, look, I told you it was possible. But I'm not crazy about that, because I've also seen, the person come back and then they take the prototype and they try to just use it and it fails in production because it's not production ready. Or, it totally gets dismissed like, yeah, that's nice, but I don't want to. So you just wasted your weekend. There's also the possibility that you bring in the prototype and I don't even remember what I was going to say. I'm not super big on this one, although sometimes it does work out, and I get it. I get how it could be helpful, but it just kind of sucks for the person who has to spend their own time doing
I've
it.
definitely been on there have definitely been times where it's like, oh, hey, great, I have this idea for the prototype, do it, and then it just falls flat.
Right.
And
Yep.
and even though you're like, but there's value here, like, why would you not want to do this? And it doesn't matter.
Well, unfortunately, what I said about the politicking, while somewhat a joke, is not. Like, if you really want to gather support for a project, you need to get some key players on your team, right? And
Which is such a crappy way to have to do it.
it is, but I mean, it's just the way it is. So
If it provides value, then it provides value, period.
but you need to prove that it provides value, and if you can get certain key people on your team, then they can help sell it for you. But I would say, so to the prototyping part of it, I think it's important. Actions speak louder than words. I'm not saying you go build something. Like there's the Infragistics prototyping tool to where you can like kind of create flows and that kind of stuff, right? After you have gotten, like, maybe just there's even apps on an iPad where you can literally just do like little screen flows to where you click on here and it goes here or whatever. You can do that pretty quick. Get key people on your team after you show them that stuff, and if you get enough buy-in, then at that point you start building a prototype, because building prototypes can take plenty of time. And to Joe's point, a lot of times they're not even done well because it's literally just, hey, let's do whatever we can to at least get this thing on the screen, and
Yeah.
not worry about performance, not worry about abstraction, anything, right?
How many times have you seen the prototype become the production
And
instance?
it happens too much, right?
Yep.
So,
Oh, fine. Yeah, we'll just take that.
But I do think that to a certain degree, and it's not so much politicking, because politicking implies usually some negative connotations, but you do need to get key people on your team, right? Like if you're trying to do, I don't know, if you're trying to add something to a page that's going to bring in clicks, then maybe you want to get a marketing person involved, right? And explain to them why it's important. I don't know. There's value in knowing who will care about it and then getting those people to work with you.
I'm just thinking, like, if you don't have support for this project, then you're probably going to have a tough time working on it for 40 hours or whatever. So that to me immediately means that you're kind of doing this, on the weekend or outside of work or sneaking around to do it.
Yeah, and that's not good either.
All right. How about
So wait, how do you gather support then? I guess you just
Oh, you mean so
donuts.
no, I mean, so I guess to your point, like, you shouldn't be spending a ton of time on the nights and weekends unless you're just super passionate about it. But like I said, even an iPad app or something like that can just kind of mock up something, right? In a pretty way that looks attractive, that will show your idea. If you can't get it across with a simple mock-up, then maybe you need to refine your idea before you even take it any further, right?
Yeah, and maybe listen to what the reservations are. Like, if they don't want to do it because they don't want to maintain it, then show how easy it is to maintain it. If they don't want to do it because it's a financial risk, then find a way to do it without that risk.
Yeah, all very good points.
All right, let's move on to how to grow a system. Well,
Grow it.
a little bit of water.
Yep, some sunshine.
Had you guys they mentioned spiral milestones? I've never heard that term before, but I thought it was kind of interesting. You imagine like starting in the center and kind of going around and having, these milestones either go more often or less often. I wasn't really sure which one it was.
I don't think I read that in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm going to have to Google
I
this.
don't recall that either, but I've never heard of it. Oh, no, it was the spiral development. But no, I don't. I'd never heard of it described that way before.
It sounds like it's somewhere between waterfall and agile.
I mean,
So you have like little milestones that are, various points apart.
this reminded me a lot of what we always talk about is iteration, right? Like, they equated it to a bridge, right? Like, a software is not a bridge. A bridge has to be complete before you can use it. Software, you can add parts to it as you go along that make it more and more valuable over time. And that is how you should grow it. You should have your vision of where you want it to be, but you should take the steps to grow it slowly and get it, or maybe not even slowly, but not just try and be like, hey, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to put anything out there until this whole thing's done, right?
He makes the analogy of a baby. right? Like every day that baby is growing, that child is growing and learning something and still able to do things, but it's like a constant iteration every day, right? Whereas like you said, the bridge is not, you can't call software, use software, sorry. You can't use a bridge as an analogy to software because the bridge isn't a bridge until it's complete.
Yep.
Before that, it's just, a piece of junk. I don't know. What would you call it? A ramp?
I did look up the spiral model, by the way, and if you've ever had one of those horrible like management training sessions, and you've seen this, it's basically you start out in one quadrant, like determine objectives, you go around the wheel, identify, development, plan, and it just kind of keeps cycling. And as the circles get bigger, you end up doing more stuff until finally you're done. But it's very waterfall-y.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that he said, and this kind of goes to what we've said, I don't know how many times on here. I would even go further and state it is a law of nature. No large, complex system can be implemented from scratch. It can only be evolved from a simple system to a complex system in a series of intentional steps. And that is completely true. If you ever have a boss that's like, we're totally replacing these 5 systems with these 10 systems that we picked out, man, and they say that it's going live on, 1 year from today, run. Because it's not going to happen. You can't do it. What you do is you slowly integrate new systems and you slowly phase out old systems, or you slowly grow software. Look at ideas. Sorry to interrupt, but look at ideas from students who are, maybe in whatever their program is, like a final, a senior project, or their thesis or whatever. And they develop some idea there, right? And regardless of how well that idea is received at that time, they start iterating on that idea until now it becomes a big thing. Mm-hmm. There's 2 big examples that come to mind. Facebook.
Actually, okay, fine. There's 3 examples that come to mind.
Wait, you forgot Facebook?
Well, I was thinking of Linux. That was the first one that came to mind.
Okay.
And then, thinking outside of the box, coincidentally, FedEx. Right? There's 2 ideas that started out like FedEx was originally, if I remember right, the guy who started it, it was like a Harvard dissertation that he gave, or master's theory or something. I forget what it was. It was an assignment in school. Let's put it that way. And if I remember right, he actually failed the assignment, and now it's a major company.
Oh, that's
right?
Cool. I didn't know that.
So those are small ideas that started out as just a simple classroom assignment that then grew and grew and grew and grew and grew to big things that they are today, right?
That's really cool. I didn't know that. I'm actually on FedEx's About page right now. That's kind of cool.
I think there's a book.
That's pretty nifty. But yeah, I mean, even Facebook, right? Like it started out as a hot or not type thing, and he just started growing it. Like it was a college, basically chat site at one point, and then it was, oh, well, let's open this up to more people. Let's build a platform that other people can hook into. Like Facebook wasn't an overnight thing. It did not grow into the multi-billion-dollar thing it did because he said, no, I have this idea. We can't put anything out until we're all done with it, right?
Right.
So
you mean there's a Facebook before Farmville?
Right.
I just kind of assumed they just launched at the same time.
I mean, it's one of the things that I think stops some people with really great ideas from ever accomplishing them.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just got excited. I remembered when Images was an app. It was a Facebook app that was separate from the rest. So if you wanted to upload photos and whatnot, you had to use a little like the plugin, whatever.
Wow.
And now, thanks to their constant iteration, we have React.
I mean, seriously. And they open sourced it. And GraphQL. Ooh. Yeah.
Does that count as embedding?
No. That's greatness.
The point being, though, is that you can't start out with an end goal in mind of it being something big, and it never happens that way. You can't show me one example. Windows has been a constant evolution over the past 20, 30 years now, until it's gotten to be the behemoth that it is, that still provides backwards compatibility for stuff from 10 years ago, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's a constant evolution. So you have to just keep iterating on it.
Yep.
So how to communicate well. Well, I could probably improve on this one.
I prefer satire.
Oh.
If you could slip some funny things, and it keeps me awake.
Uh,
No, really, you didn't really talk about this so much, but some things I wanted to kind of add here are basically trying to keep conversations in tickets so that they're searchable, viewable by people who don't have access to your email. If you do it in email, use a good subject line, make it searchable, because, man, there's so many emails fly around, they get lost, and so the closer you can keep the things you're saying to like 140 characters, or even broken up, or even better in somewhere like a wiki or a ticket, the better, because there's just too much information flying around to keep it in your head all at once.
Yeah, I mean, he makes a great point that part of the problem that makes communication so hard is that the whole process is flawed, because the person that you're trying to communicate with, they're not working hard to try to understand you. Right. And to your point about the 140 characters, like, I have a good friend that I used to work with that he and I had exact opposite approaches on things, especially when it came to emails, because, I would take the point of view of, well, if I'm only going to grab if I'm only going to get 30 seconds of your time, let me focus you in on, here's the thing that I want to, say, right? Whereas he would take the approach of, well, if I'm going to get any of your time, then I want you to have all of the information. So, mine would be a paragraph, his would be a book. And, it was like, well, I understood his point of view, right? Because especially if you're talking to, like, imagine if this email was going to like a C-level exec, right? They're only going to read but so many emails from you, right? So his point was, well, just give them all the information that they have, so that you have, so that they can have it to evaluate it right then and there, rather than trying to have a discourse with them over several.
it's like information overload.
Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
the way I
speaking of
took
which,
it, though.
You ever get someone who will forward you like a 17 email long chain, like, here, catch up.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I hate
I
that.
get why they're not going to be able to really summarize that easily, but man, going through, there's something about scrolling to the bottom and reading up that's just painful.
I guess though, the takeaway from that, from that exchange with my friend was that, like, it did kind of make me become more,
Verbose.
yeah. Okay, fine. We'll call it verbose.
Yeah, see, it's funny because I actually feel differently about it. So a lot of times now, like when I write important emails, like most of my emails, they're basically like glorified chat. They're short, they're one sentence, whatever. But the ones where I'm actually trying to express something now, I'll actually do something like have a header that's, 5 words saying, here's what I think we should do. And then I'll have another header down below that says, other options or something. So rather than providing, 3 paragraphs kind of talking about this and that and whatever, I try to kind of present the information in the way that I think they're looking to hear it. And a lot of times I'll even do something like, in a nutshell, here's my 2-sentence saying, let's do this. Now here's the details that says how I got to that conclusion.
Yeah, I think honestly, formatting, like what you said, having like headings, that can be huge.
Oh yeah, I definitely try to do that.
Like if you say, this is what I think we should do, and then a couple bullet points, right? Quick reads, something that they can skim with their eyes and get the gist of the whole thing. And then, like you said, if you want to throw the details down at the bottom because now you've grabbed their interest, perfect. But if you literally just have blobs of text everywhere, like somebody, I know we've all done it, right? Like you open an email and you're like, I don't have time to read this right now.
Right.
But if there had been a heading 2 up there that had something that was attention grabbing, a couple bullet points, another heading 2, and a couple bullet points, chances are you would take the time because your eyes can easily hit those points, right? And I mean, one of the things that he said in this chapter that I really agreed with is if he had something important to communicate, he would try and talk about it. He would have a white paper that he could hand out, and then he might also have a presentation, a PowerPointer type thing. And I think that's important because everybody is stimulated in different ways. Some people are visual learners. Some people are audible. Some people like to just read things, right? And so having things prepared in that way, if it's important enough to warrant that amount of work, can be super important.
But I mean, that assumes that the problem itself warrants
Yes.
that type of thing,
Yeah.
like a presentation. I mean, come on. If I'm just sending you an email, I
That's
don't
different.
want to do a presentation.
Right.
But I know that there have been times where I've sent emails that were the subject matter itself was already complicated,
Right.
right? And so now I'm trying to convey very complicated topics, information about very complicated topics, and like he says, the reader or listener, they're not working as hard to understand it necessarily, right? And so there are times where like I'll get responses back and think, man, it just went completely over their head. Like all of that effort that I put in there to try to be clear, to explain it as clear as I could, and to avoid confusion, and it feels like it was all for naught. And then I know that there have been times where I've been guilty of getting that response and then completely missing their point.
Because it's too much to read. It's too much to take in, and especially out of context, right? Like when you are the developer and you're in the code and you're in the problem, it's very easy because you are immersed in that world, right? Now you're trying to recreate that world for somebody that's not immersed in it, and it's really hard to do that in a way that doesn't bore someone to tears, right? Like, and I'm sorry, but
Okay,
that's
so you don't like my emails, okay?
I actually have a problem when I'm writing emails like that because I'll look at it and go, man, nobody's going to read this, right? Like they're going to open this email and go, oh man, they're going to read the first sentence and be like, man, I really don't even want to have to try and figure out what's going on here.
But where I thought you were going to go with this though is that you were talking about sometimes you're so immersed in it, right, and difficulty to convey that. But there have been times where, like, when the response comes back, you're too involved in whatever that problem is, that you're not taking a step back to see their response the way they saw it.
Right.
And that's where I meant, like, there have been times where I've gotten responses that, it took me several reads before I was like, oh, wait a minute, I see what they're getting at now, right? Because I was too deep. I was too lost in the weeds,
right?
And it took me a while to like step back out and come back out. So there are definitely times where like I'll read that response multiple times, you know, trying to make heads or tails of it.
Yeah.
When I write a long email like that, a lot of times what I'm really saying is I have an impossible problem. I can think of two solutions and they're both bad. And so what I'm trying to do now is to basically have that, exactly what I said, be the first sentence or two. Like, I have a problem. I don't know how to solve it. See more details below. Because that gives the person, actionability. It gives, your boss or whoever is reading it something to respond to. And if they want to dive deeper on either of those solutions, they've got the information below and they can kind of skim or hop around to what they need to. But ultimately, your ask is right there, front and center, and with its own header.
That's fantastic advice, actually. That really is.
And it's a great segue into the next section, which is how to tell people things they don't want to hear.
In email.
With headers.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. Unfortunately, it's been proven time and time again. Sales copy on pages is usually just kind of bam in your face type stuff, and it affects you psychologically. Anyways,
yeah, I mean, one of the points that he makes here is exactly to what Joe was saying. Is the best way to tell someone about a problem is to offer a solution at the same time.
Yep. That was the one sentence I highlighted in this entire area.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean,
I've heard some stuff in like management type training before about, give them a situation, give them the thing that happened, give them what they did, and give them the outcome, and blah, blah, blah. And compliment them at the same time. But really, I feel like keeping it kind of clinical. If it's really bad news, then just keep it short and say, we're not going to be able to launch this May 1st.
But you look nice today.
I'm not going to be able to do this ticket. Yeah.
Well, that's awkward.
No, man.
I thought I was supposed to compliment them.
I'm a mess. I am not a pretty crier.
Oh man.
Why did we go there?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, it is often better to just suck it up and do it, right? Like unpleasant things in life, period. It's better to just get them out of the way so that they're not weighing on you, and you just do it in the best way possible. You know, hey, the schedule's gonna have to slip. We're not gonna make it.
So we've become a
Yep.
Nike commercial.
Just do it. That's right.
All right.
You know, I do with this with like if I'm if I'm legitimately sick or some emergency or something happened, like a lot of times I'll hem and haw about the email that I'm writing and say I have to miss work tomorrow. I'm really sorry. Like, and I'll write it and rewrite it, and then ultimately at the end I'll just delete it all and say I have to miss tomorrow.
Yeah, done. Right.
Send me an email if you need anything.
Yeah, I mean that's really the short and the sweet is it. If they want more detail, they'll ask. Right? Don't inundate people with detail on especially uncomfortable topics unless they want it. And if they want it, give it to them.
Yeah, I'm always tempted to be like, listen, I had 101 fever from 5 to 7, and it went up to 100.5, and I don't really want to work today because, no, man, just you're sick. That's all they care about.
Right. Yeah.
No, but really, I had diarrhea at 3:23 and again at 3:47.
I got 99 problems, but Joe's diarrhea isn't one.
It is
All right.
now.
Apparently. All right. How to deal with managerial myths.
Yeah. You know what? There are. Is this the one where there are a bunch of them? Yeah. Let me open this page.
Yeah.
There are. I thought these were really
The
good.
So,
bullet points I highlighted
More
every one of them.
documentation is always better.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want it, but they don't want to spend any time on it.
Right.
And another thing he didn't even mention that
Definitely include that documentation, though.
we talked about earlier is a lot of times that documentation will get stale, and that's also a problem, right?
Yep.
I've actually we come around to the idea that sometimes there okay, I'm doing a horrible job of explaining this. What was that section on how to communicate well? So wikis are prevalent now, right? It's really easy to have a wiki in your for your organization, and you can put a lot of great information in there. But sometimes I've kind of come to the opinion that what would be even better than that wiki. That wiki would be great, definitely for people who don't have access to the code, but for those that do, a really good README right there next to the project goes a long way.
Yeah.
And it
Man, I like readmes in every folder.
Oh yeah.
well, whatever. My point being is that put the documentation there for the developer and not in just the wiki, because then to your point about the wiki growing stale,
Yeah.
or the documentation growing stale, then it could definitely happen, right?
Yeah.
Programmers can be equated.
Nope.
What?
Different people have different strengths. You can't just say, hey, take Sue off this and put Bobby on it, and let's not adjust any of the timelines.
But as a manager, I have this project that's going to take X amount of time, and if I can add more developers to it, then I can reduce that amount of time.
Yeah, the swim lines in Jira are all the same. It says programmer.
Dude,
Or
this
assignee.
one that you just read, I actually almost dropped my Kindle when I read it. You cannot, everybody hear this, you cannot scale a team up at the tail end of a project and expect it to go faster. As a matter of fact, what you should expect is that it's going to slow to a snail's pace, because now the people that were actually getting work done now have to bring everybody else up to speed on something that they're going to have no clue about. Trying to double the size of a team or triple or quadruple the size of a team when you're already late on a project will not help the project.
It depends. Let's say I do largely agree with you.
Okay.
But if you're early into the project and we're late, we were planning to have it done in 4 months, but we now see it's going to be 6 months.
Yeah.
You got enough time to bring a couple more people in. It might not help you, get any further. You might still be 4 months along, but just in case if there's additional problems that come up.
Yeah,
So yeah, if you're what you're describing is like you've got 2 weeks left, I'm totally on board.
yeah. I mean, even a month left in a lot of cases. So I equate this almost to the overhead of having dual processor systems, right? When you have 2 processors, your system's not twice as fast.
What?
It might be,
That's what that turbo button's for.
you know, it might be 150% faster than or 50% faster than just one processor, right? There's overhead in managing resources. And it's even more true in the case with people. And so, and I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everything should just have one person working on it or 2 people. Please, I'm not trying to go to extremes here. But people that believe that programmers are just cogs that can be plugged into situations,
Yeah,
that is an incorrect assessment of how things work.
I agree.
So I think the takeaway is to replace your programmers with SSDs.
Yes.
All right. Resources can be added to a late project to speed it up. We already covered that. It is possible to estimate software development reliably.
Nope. It's not even theoretically possible.
Until
All
quantum,
we can say is we're going to try.
until quantum computing comes out, which apparently they've made steps for.
Wait. That's going to make estimating software development.
Absolutely, man. They could do all the permutations. We won't ever have to think again.
Right. It'll either take 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. It'll just be like the number of days. It'll
ever
be
had a
from
test?
1 to N.
I do like to say that, the smaller a task is, the more accurate your estimates can be. But if Visual Studio starts crashing on you, then
Oh, man.
sometimes that doesn't work out so well. Even if you know exactly what you need to do, you know what to type.
I will agree though
life
with
happens.
where you're going with that. The smaller tasks are definitely easier.
Yeah.
You know. All right. Programmers' productivity can be measured in terms of some simple metric like lines of code.
So you remember the days when people actually got paid per lines of code? Like that actually happened?
I never saw that.
Yeah.
Tickets, though, I would
remember
see, like, so-and-so closed 11 tickets. Like, they wrote those tickets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was really one ticket that they broke into 12 pieces.
Yeah.
Man.
No, I've never seen lines of code as like any kind of valuable metric ever. I mean, it goes kind of like what Joe was saying about the number of tickets closed. Like, who cares?
By the way, yeah, if anybody ever thinks it's a great idea to report on how well you're doing on tickets and all that, you can almost guarantee that's going to be gamed in some way, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
Well, lines of code is the same way.
yeah, I mean it those kind of statistics don't matter unless somebody's really paying attention to what those tickets have in them, right? But then again, every ticket has its own weight and its own, life, really. Like, you get into it and you think, oh, this one's going to be easy, and then you get into the system, you're like, oh man, this is not a 5-point ticket, right? This is it's not a realistic way to do things.
And it's not just programmers either. I worked somewhere where QA was kind of incentivized to find tickets, and it was kind of weird for them because basically the more tickets they found, the better. So at the end of the release cycle, even if the product that went out was totally crap and QA did a terrible job, they always had the defense of saying, well, I wrote 1,000 tickets and it was still crap. So obviously the programming was terrible. But that's not really the case, because everyone was incentivized to write more tickets. So there were lots of junk tickets.
Right.
And they had the effect of basically
Grammar.
masking the true quality.
Yeah, they could be like little things like grammar or
Yep.
Not really functional things that are more important, but like, oh, this is 2 pixels off.
Yeah, I think the key really is having everybody on board with what the vision is, right?
Yep.
Let's try and get towards what the goal is. And let's all do it in a collaborative way, right? If you're focusing on metrics on things that really do not matter, like number of tickets opened or number of tickets closed, you're doing things wrong, period.
Yep. The same place. You were there was a reverse incentive for the programmer, so your team would show up with the number of tickets. And so if a QA person would write a ticket, like, you would rush down there to talk to him, try to talk him out of it, see if you can hurry him squeak that in before they wrote that ticket. And then they eventually got to the point where they would show the names of the people who had the most tickets. And so, man, if you were the person who was on that, the hot chart, the idea they said was basically if you could help that person or you saw that person had, the most tickets, and you can kind of it was highlighting the problem so that people could help out, but it really had the effect of like feeling like you had like the evil eye of Sauron on you as you walked around the hallway. Like you have 11 tickets. How dare you get coffee?
Man, that is no way to motivate, because that also, let's be fair, right? That's going to lead to sloppiness. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get these tickets out of my pile, and you're not going to be as thorough.
And it really did encourage sandbagging. Like you say, you know what, I can't do all 11 tickets. You're going to have to reassign them, and you keep, you fight like hell for the easiest tickets, and then you make sure that you're able to deliver them, on the times that you estimated.
That's ridiculous.
And that's how you get ahead in that system. Yeah,
I hate that.
Yeah.
All right. So, last but not least, how to deal with temporary organizational chaos.
Temporary.
First, hope it's temporary, right?
Yeah.
So I was
well,
gonna say, step one.
I mean, he's going along from the point of view of, that within your organization, sometimes there are things like layoffs or buyouts or IPOs or firings or hirings. So it's not necessarily like the chaos isn't necessarily bad,
right.
right?
Right.
An IPO is a big deal.
Yep.
Right. That could be a good thing for your company. Hirings could be a buyout could be a good thing. It doesn't have to be bad, but the point is that there's a lot of
Commotion
going on. Thank you.
Yeah. The one thing that he says here, and this is actually the reason why I love what we do. Engineers have the power to create and sustain. That is so true, and that is really kind of the power behind what we do. Is it's easy to show value because we create things, and so it's easy to kind of rise above and become important even when there's chaos going on.
Yeah, I mean, we've made this. We've commented on this before because he's definitely opinionated on the engineer versus the non-engineer, right? And he says that non-engineers cannot create or sustain anything without an engineer, and it's kind of like, all right, I've definitely known some people that were not, engineers or software developers by trade, but they knew enough around it to hack something into place to create something that got a business up and going.
Yep.
Right. And, we're able to, hire on additional teams and whatnot. So it was, it just felt unfair.
This is a little arrogant, sort of, towards engineers being above and beyond everybody else. Which is,
it felt kind of elitist, and that's. I mean, we've talked about it before, but yeah, I didn't really agree with it.
I mean, I guess my one takeaway from this that I actually did appreciate is the fact that when there is chaos, continue doing what you do. Create things, add value, and that will show through, right? And you might get fired, but if you are truly good at what you do and you are good at adding value, then it's not going to be hard for you to pick up somewhere else and go do that somewhere else as well, right?
But what about his point, though, that he says that, if during all this commotion, right, someone comes up to you to create something that you think is just stupid, that you should
Or
just
legal.
smile and nod and, go along with it until they walk away and then just ignore it. And if you are a leader, you should tell your team to ignore all that nonsense too. Like,
That's pushing it, right? I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of position of power you're in. Like, that's
and who the position is that's making the stupid comment, or
Right.
the comment that you feel is stupid.
there's so many. Yeah, when I read that, I was like, I don't even know where to go with this, because I mean, obviously, if somebody comes and asks you to do something that you just know you shouldn't be doing, yeah, then it's pretty common sense, right? But I don't know.
Listen, we're only going to skim a couple pennies for every transaction.
Yep.
I saw this in Superman. This works great.
Like, the feds are coming tomorrow. If they ask about me, then I tell them you've never heard of me. I never worked here. You don't know what's going on. And
Hey,
then,
who's that?
Call me afterwards.
Man, yeah, I don't know. I don't really feel great about what that last part was. So.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've all worked places that have done things, but I've seen credit cards stored in the clear or CVVs in the database, or lots of crappy stuff. That's not really organizational chaos, but there's definitely been times when there's been an incentive to do, to cut a corner or do things the wrong way or whatever, and you just got to kind of stand your ground. And if you get fired, then that place sucked anyway.
Well, I kind of like the approach that whenever I've been in situations kind of like that, and it may not be because of like organizational chaos, but just someone comes up to you with an idea, and generally, what I think that you're really describing there is someone they're coming to you with this, idea that you might think is stupid, because really what's happening is they're trying to subvert the process, right? And so in that situation, I'm just like, yeah, we'll put a ticket in and it can get prioritized, like
Get it in
everything
the sprint,
else.
right? Yeah.
And, if it makes it, it makes it. If it doesn't, I might not tell them
A
that
good
part.
example is breaking the chain. Basically, you have, either your buddy or someone from, under, someone outside your tree kind of trying to slip little favors in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's kind of stuff that happens with the organizational chaos. Yeah, that's
Yep.
definitely,
All the time.
especially it's rough when, like, the things they want aren't stupid.
Yeah, I mean,
know?
it's both
They're
ways,
great
right?
ideas. Yeah.
Great point. Yeah, hey, we know this thing that will make the company an extra 20% in revenue.
Yeah, let's
dude.
sneak
If
it
I
in.
do that, I'm gonna get shot on site, so I can't do that right now.
Wait, if you make 20% more in revenue for the company, you're going to get shot on site?
If you
Yeah.
work on something that
I'll
wasn't,
tell you what, if
approved,
you do know of something that can make an extra 20%, you just go ahead and do it.
right,
Oh, dude, that is not the case.
No.
And you know it.
you get fired.
There are absolutely organizations that, their priorities aren't necessarily tied to revenue, strangely enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll conclude that take on how to be a programmer by Robert L. Reed. So that leads us into Alan's favorite portion of the show. This is the tip of the week.
that's right.
So, I mentioned that for any of the self-taught developers out there, I would have a tip for you. And so, I got two for you. One is, and there will be links to both of these in the show notes. But the first one is this really great course on Pluralsight that a friend of ours pointed us to on React with Relay and GraphQL and Flux. And it is...
I'm the one who pointed us to that, aren't I?
No,
Really?
it's John.
Yep.
Oh, it was John.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh.
Look who tried to take credit.
My
Wow.
bad.
Wow.
I giveth credit to John, and I taketh away.
Apparently. But I mean, it's a really great course. Again, you have to be willing to watch the course on something JavaScript related. So if that's not your forte, then maybe you're not interested. But one of the things that I did like about it is just the speaker himself, like the presenter himself. He does a great job, like of presenting the material through this course. So it was a well put together course. I think you'd really like it. We'll have a link to that one in the show notes. But then I also wanted to give a link to, and this one came up in the Slack channel, actually a link to a specific video, and it came up, but to a YouTube video. But the link that we're going to have in our show notes is for the overall contributor, which is the MIT Open Courseware. And there's just some great content. And like, it's one of those sources of content that you just kind of forget about every now and then. And then someone will be like, oh, well, hey, I like this video. And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot they were doing that. And then you go back and you look through it, and there's just this treasure of great content out there. So we'll have those two links out there for you to take a look at.
Yeah, and on the on his first one, the React one, the guy's use of VI or Vim or whatever you want to call it, it makes you really want to learn that IDE, because that dude just breezes through.
Wait a minute. No, I will not ever support that statement that you just
Vim.
said. VI is not an IDE.
Oh no, you're right. It's a text editor. It's a text editor. But man, that guy's so good in it. It's kind of ridiculous to watch him just go through it. But yeah, I totally agree. It was an excellent course. All right, so my tip of the week is Open Rosette. So this is SQL Server specific. If you ever wanted to, say, create a table and you wanted to do it by executing a stored proc. So like think of something in the case where like if you do a select into new table from existing table, right? That's something that you do a lot in SQL Server, especially if you're used to transforming data or moving data around. Well, it's kind of frustrating because you can't do like an exec into from a stored proc to build a table on the fly. What you can do is you could do a select into my new table from Open Rosette. So you could use Open Rosette to open a connection to that same server and to that same database. You have to pass in the connection type string and then the actual connection string itself. But then you could just exec the stored proc that you want, and the results of that would get inserted into a new table. So if you ever have the need to generate a table based off of stored procedures results, or even do any number of other things, you can use Open Rosette as kind of your way to trick SQL Server into doing what you want. And we will have a snippet example up on the show notes. So if you want to see how that's done, just click the link in the show notes here or in the notes here and go up to the site and take a look.
Yep, and now it's time for my tip. So
I think, well, hold on, real quick. If I remember right, too, that's also the only way that you can make sure I use my wording correctly here. It's the only way that you can bulk update is through Open Rosette. Like, or
You're talking about like a BCP? No.
Like if you wanted to do, maybe bulk update is the wrong way to phrase that. If you wanted to do like a certain count at a time, like 1,000 at a time, like you could bulk insert.
I don't know,
but I'm pretty sure that like but it's file specific though. It has to be.
You are talking about bulk copy then.
Like if you wanted to, okay, let's say you had 1 million records, right? And you wanted to bulk insert that, then you can easily do an insert statement and say like, well, not easily, but you could do that over, whatever, say 1,000 at a time if you wanted to do that. For Open Rosette, you can do the similar thing, but at an update, because you can't do updates in bulk like that.
I don't know.
Or batch might be a better way to describe what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. So maybe that'll be our next tip. We'll have to look it up. Cool.
All right. So, my tip is, I don't remember if we mentioned this last time or not, but it's Code Wars, which is an awesome site for learning to program and solving the kind of problems that you typically see in like interviews. And we actually have a clan on there, Coding Blocks, and Carl from MS Dev Show is currently at the top of that list. So you guys should join and knock him down a peg. Sorry, Carl.
Oh, by the way, I didn't find this out until after I've been in there playing around. If you do it in the order that it presents them to you, you won't get points that fast. You actually have to go over the more difficult ones, and that's why I spent my time just kind of going step by step. Yeah, don't do that. Get the ones that'll get you some points.
If you want points.
I haven't
Sometimes
tried this
you want
yet.
an easy one.
It's kind of fun. I had more fun than I thought I would.
Really?
Yeah. And our clan is Coding Space Blocks, right?
Yep.
So if you want to join our little group of people so that you can compete freely with us, Coding Space Blocks for your clan.
Yep, I solved I think 3 or 4 problems, and I realized I hadn't gone up a level. I'm like, what the heck? And it's because I was doing all easier problems.
Same thing.
And they were interesting problems though. They were all kind of fun, not too hard, but they were definitely still head scratchers.
You know what I liked about it, Joe, was the fact that you cannot see the solutions beforehand unless you kind of want to forfeit the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to code up what your solution is. And after you do, you get to see everybody's, and you actually get to see the top rated ones that people voted up, right? Now, one thing I will caution against, because this is fun.
This is like competitive Stack Overflow?
Sort of. It's more just interesting challenges to do. But the thing that is both kind of cool and slightly annoying is like, I think I had commented on ones. I was like, dude, there's no type checking in this at all. He's like, dude, this is just a little thing to try and get this solution. Like, this is definitely not production ready code. So that's one thing to keep in
So in
mind.
other words, you can't use like Flow.js in your.
Right.
No.
But it is something to keep in mind, right? Like some of the solutions you see, it's not like you want to copy and paste these things and stick it in your production code, because these people are literally, in some cases, are just trying to do the most clever thing ever, even though the performance is going to be, quadratic, right? It could just be terrible. So
Quadratic.
right. So it's just,
I think you're just describing exponential.
yeah, something like that. But it's just, I don't know. It's fun to kind of to do the challenges and also see the other solutions that people come up with. So it's definitely worth a spin.
Yeah, a good example is the one that I did, which was to basically convert a string to Morse code, and they actually provide the dictionary that you give it a character, you get the Morse code back, and you kind of had to do something special with the spaces, but it wasn't too hard at all, and it was just kind of fun, and I felt like a better program afterwards.
That's cool.
All right. All right. Well, like I said, that wraps up this show on how to be a programmer. So we hope you know now. And you can tell your boss, I now know how to be an advanced programmer.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
So
amazing.
that'll help you in your negotiations.
That's right.
So we'll have all the show notes ready for you. But like always, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and more using your favorite podcast app. And if you haven't already, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you happen to find our podcast. And, if you want to head over to www.codingblocks.net/review to find easy links to either of those, use that too.
Yeah, we totally didn't beg this episode. What's that about?
I know, I forgot.
I feel like we should beg now. Please, 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 go leave us a review. That would be amazing. All right, beg over. End beg. All right. Also, visit us at codingblocks.net, where you can find all our show notes, examples, discussions, and more.
And visit us at, oh, dang, I did that again. How do I not know this by now?
And then, if you haven't visited us at codingblocks.net, let's go ahead and visit us at codingblocks.net.
Hey, you
That's
know what
right.
we haven't done? We haven't begged for reviews.
Are we going backwards now?
Yes, we are.
You're listening to.
Episode 1.
So,
You're listening to Joe Struggle.
So send us some email at comments at Coding Blocks, and follow us on Twitter. And if you just go to codingblocks.net, we have links to Twitter, to Facebook. We should have one to Slack. That's probably a good idea. And Code Wars too. And we're everywhere. So however you want to communicate, we are probably there, and we want to hear from you.
Hey, and if you find somewhere where we're not that you think we should be, let us know. Drop us a line.
Yep. Email us or add us.
Oh,
What? Ooh.
man, tweet us jokes too. Rebecca Marquis was just tweeted us one, and it was awesome, and we forgot to read it. But yeah, send us jokes. We love it.
Hey, wait. What's this joke? Read it. We're not done yet.
I'm looking.
I think I read it the other day, and it was pretty good. Hold on. Where'd it go?
Oh,
It was something about meat, right?
Oh
Yeah.
gosh,
I know the one you're
Hold
talking
on,
about.
I got it.
Nobody's going to find it.
Here we go. I have it.
I found it. Yeah.
All right. I went to the butcher's, and I bet him 50 pounds that he couldn't reach the meat off the top shelf. He said, no, the stakes are way too high.
Love it. Thank you, Rebecca.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was a great. I also liked the retweet that Joe did, and I felt like this was, I guess it was Mike Ash that originally tweeted it, but I think I really liked it a little bit more because it had Joe's name in it. That Joe's code has 20 bugs.
Oh yeah.
If Joe fixes 2 bugs per hour for 8 hours, how many bugs does Joe's code now have?
40.
Answer 27.
So how do they know?
Is somebody spying on me?
It's so true.
The NSA. We got them after us already.
Oh, I loved that one. All right.
That's it. Good
See ya.
night.